Up here, looking down on you, I wish you could see our oasis so blue. We were all born here, unsure what that means. Our petty borders and wars don't mean a damn thing. A hateful world can feel so crowded now that I'm up here all alone. I wish you all could see you've forgotten your home. Look up, these stars are just the sea. Look up, stay the course with me. Look up, every river, every creature running wild, born our sacred mother's child. This place is our only home. Look up, you are not alone. Lights below, can you look above? Every single heart yearns to be loved. One thin blue skin is the breath of every life. Every tree breathes with us through the lonely night. If you were looking down beside me, would you forget the hand that feeds you? Know that no moment is wasted, that we carry each other through. Look out, these stars are just the sea. Look out, stay the course with me. Look up, every river, every creature running wild, born our sacred mother's child. This place is our only home. Look up, you are not alone. There is no them, there's only us. It's only this, it was always thus. We share this air, we share this sky, the world within. We are the reason why. Look up, these stars are just the sea. Look up, stay the course with me. Look up, every river, every creature running wild, born our sacred mother's child. This place is our only home. Look up, you are not alone.
We're live. It's Giving Friday, and today we're giving back to the Christians in defense of our sometime least favorite Christians, the Mormons. Hi, I'm Ex-Mo Joe. I used to be a Mormon. I think Mormonism is wrong, but I don't think that Mormons are not Christians. Now, that being said, Fridays are for fun, man. That's what we're here for. You know what I'm saying? Oh, are you really suspended, Tim? I had wondered. Yeah, I'll get you my number. Let's not do it here. But I got people. I mean, we got people. We got ways. I'm sorry to say. You know what though? Screw them. Screw Facebook. You want to be on the Korahor app anyway. Everybody ought to be on the Korahor app. I can say that with a lot of sass and snark because I am the only one on the Korahor app so far. I am still working on it. I found more bugs today on the onboarding side of it. So I'm working it out. But soon y'all will be quitting your Facebooks. You'll be quitting your Twitters. You'll be quitting all of the ticky-tacky BS Oracle nonsense. No. If you're gonna be on an app that connects you to something good in the world, it's gotta be a nonprofit social media app where the only ads you see are for your spiritual development and to help other people. To wit, Korahor.app, you see the banner there. I also want to throw this up on there. If you want to help us today, here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not going to ask you to donate money to the Church of Korahor. Well, I'm always asking. Let's just be clear. You can always give money to the Church of Korahor, and boy, diggity, do we need money. But today, on Friday, on Giving Fridays, we like to help our partners. And today, I'd like to encourage you to help us to help our partners, SUMAC, Southern Utah Mutual Aid Coalition, who together with, and now I forget the name, it's Manos Amigos, which is a new organization here in Southern Utah that is helping the families of immigrants who are being deported or who are in detention. A lot of these immigrant families, they're afraid to go out. They're afraid to even try to go out to restaurants or to the store. It's a very difficult time, especially here in Southern Utah. And where I am back again, hello, Utah. And so if you go to korahor.org/give, you scroll down to the bottom, just go to korahor.org and click on give. It's super easy once you're at korahor.org. Great website. I highly recommend. You scroll down to the bottom of that page and you will see an address in St. George. And well, I guess technically we're in Washington. No, we're technically in St. George. In St. George, here in St. George, Utah. Washington, St. George, Utah. It's all the same. And if you have food, blankets, or any other needful material things, but mainly we're looking for food items that you can do without or that you can purchase and send. You can send them to the Church of Korahor at that address. Include a note that says that you're sending this to help immigrant families in Southern Utah, and we will make sure that SUMAC gets them. Basically, to keep things in a plausible deniability way, we can give items to SUMAC. SUMAC can give items to Manos Amigos, and then Manos Amigos distributes them to the actual immigrant families. That way, nobody at the Church of Korahor can be questioned about actually where these immigrant families are, where they live, or where they are currently. All we do is get SUMAC the materials. SUMAC gets the materials to Manos Amigos, and as far as how they get to the actual people, well, we isolate and protect everybody that way. But it's super important that we help people who are living in fear and danger. People say, if I lived in a time where people were being hunted down by their own government, I would be the one to hide them. I would be the one to protect them. I would be the one to transport them. I'd have been one of the ones on the Underground Railroad. I'd have been one of the ones who lied when the Gestapo showed up. And thank goodness you never have a moment where you end up having to do that. Well, I put to you that you are living in that moment. There is a time now where you and I, we must put up or shut up. And I am very happy to say we're partnering with the right people to make sure that that actually happens. And so please make sure, if you are able, go to korahor.org/give. Also, that's also a place where you will find our Amazon wish list if you want to help to give to our mission to serve the unsheltered. There are items in our Amazon wish list that you can purchase. They get sent again to that same address here in St. George, right down the road from where I am now. And we make sure that those go out to people who are living and sleeping rough on the streets. And so we're doing our part. And one day, we are going soon, hopefully, we are going to have our own social network where on a daily basis, you'll see opportunities to give in small ways and to volunteer in small ways and to help out in big or small ways to help people around you. And, this is how we grow and develop as people. Today, though, I thought we'd get together and do something kind of new. And that is something I've batted about for a while. Uh, there are some Christians, particularly at the Daily Wire. You familiar with the Daily Wire? This is Ben Shapiro and his crew. If you don't know, let me sum up. A few months ago now, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 months ago, uh, the Mormons got good and pissed off at the Daily Wire. Mormon apologists on YouTube, I should say, especially young Mormon men who are kind of the bread and butter for the Daily Wire. And they got pissed off because a producer for the Daily Wire took to Twitter to talk about how Mormons aren't real Christians. It's kind of weird when you consider that this is an organization that was founded by a group of people who worked, who were largely Orthodox Jews or practicing Jews in any event, who had left an organization run by a Jewish man, Dennis Prager. If you don't know the story of the Daily Wire, basically all came out of frustrations by people who worked at Dennis Prager's Prager University, saying that he didn't go hard enough, and that he didn't do enough to appeal to evangelical Christians. And his whole argument was, well, our organization is an education organization. Bullshit. And and we're not the kind of conservative political, firebrand group that you guys are talking about making. And so this group of people left this Dennis Prager's Prager University and took Ben Shapiro and tried to kind of rebrand and rebuild a new Prager University, but one that wasn't afraid to go hardcore in politics with a new firebrand person that was supposed to be Ben Shapiro. Well, before long, it kind of fizzled out. That wasn't it wasn't hot enough with young conservatives, particularly just because Ben Shapiro was involved. So they went out and they raised money and they recruited people and they got some young Christians involved and some Christian apologists involved. And a lot of Mormons really globbed on to this. There are presumably, from what I understand, and I don't watch carefully, but according to these Mormon apologists, they know for a fact that there are thousands of Mormons who are regular subscribers to the Daily Wire, that are now either canceling their subscriptions to the Daily Wire, not going to hear any complaints from me, or are threatening to. And for a while, when it started with just like tweets from this one guy, it was like, oh guys, you lose your shit over nothing. You know what I mean? You guys, some of you Mormons, you just go flying off the handle. Some people just tweet angry shit. They just get over yourselves. And a lot of Mormons felt that way. Apparently, I watched Ward Radio deal live on air with people in their comment section saying, okay, I'm not going to cancel my subscription to the Daily Wire just because they said things that hurt my feelings. I hear things that hurt my feelings on TV all the time. I hear things on the news that hurt my feelings, that hurt my faith in, or meant to harass me over my faith in the news all the time. And so they say, and I'm not going to just give up on the rest of their content just because of me. Well, it seems like for a while, like, oh, this was going to fizzle out. I thought about making content about it back when it happened, but before long, it just kind of like fizzled out. It was a big nothing burger, it turns out. And these Mormons continue to subscribe, in spite of all these threats. And so, what's up? Catholicism is cool. We are a Friday service right now for the Church of Korihor. We are a spiritual congregation for atheists, agnostics, and spiritual nuns, with an O, not a U, as will become very apparent in any event. So the Daily Wire, however, now is in the hot seat because apparently they have doubled down on this content that apparently is becoming really popular among conservative evangelical Christians and Catholics who subscribe to the Daily Wire. And so Mormon bashing has always been great fun for Christians, including some Catholics, though some Catholics are cool. Every group's got people who are cool. But then they also always have somebody who are particularly nasty. And I've been watching from not so afar as the Daily Wire got particularly Joe Hirschmeyer, a Christian apologist, to defend or to accuse the Mormons of not being real Christians in a new series that they've come out with, where they just kind of go through Mormon content and or Mormon history and try to come up with all the old arguments about why Mormons are not real Christians. There is an ex-Mormon on the channel there. Catholicism is cool. Yes. But you're going to see a lot of ex-Mos. You stick around long enough, Catholicism is cool. You're going to see a lot of ex-Mormons who think that ex-Mormonism is cool. But only this ex-Mo is going to be here to say, today, I'm putting back on the black name tag, and I'm going to bat for the Mormons. Because, frankly, I just don't think that their apologists are doing a good enough damn job. So, I am Joe Rollins, ex-Mormon, and I am going to defend the Mormons against these claims. I wanted to show you a few clips of this. In fact, let me go ahead and throw out you guys like the new, you guys like Look Up, those of you who are here, the new Godless Hymn. I just finished that one today. Very excited. Yeah. Well, you know what? That's that's an interesting case, actually. I actually know an ex-Mormon, a reform Mormon who would make the same case, Mr. Catholicism is cool, that Mormons actually are atheists, or more particularly that Joseph Smith was an atheist. It's an interesting case to be made, but we'll see. So I'm going to try and not get the live suspended. We got into trouble with this before. So I'm only going to show you a few very brief clips from some Mormon apologists, just so that you can see, before I get into my defense, that I'm not making it up. And so that you can kind of see this is going to be kind of loosey-goosey. I'm going to skip around a little bit here. We're going to show you some of these clips so you can kind of get a flavor for the reaction that these Mormon apologists are giving to this, to the accusation that they are not true biblical Christians. Let's see. This one's going to be from Latter-day Saints, also known as the Paul brothers. Oh, we love them. You love to see it, don't you?
Confused Matt Fradd is like, what's going on? Who is this?
Let me see if I can
he
skip
has
around
with
and find
Chuck
it.
about the Trinity. Okay,
Okay,
and
here we go.
honestly, great points made here. I'd love to hear what Sir Matt Fradd and Sir Joe Heschmeyer, destroyer of Mormonism, would have to say about this. Roll the clip, Brent.
Play this.
Or
one.
here, wait, pause here. It's the Instagram clip. Yeah.
Yeah, which, Chuck has 170 posts on Instagram, probably more on TikTok, right? Because you were on TikTok before.
Yeah.
While he was alive. Here's my contention.
Let me just pause real quick there. He's saying he's referring to this live they did on TikTok, referring to I believe a Catholic man that he's arguing with about the fact that Jesus never taught the Trinity according to the Gospels, which is true. In fact, we're going to get into it a little bit here.
Can you show me where one author that wrote the biblical text teaches clearly and identifies consubstantiality between the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost?
I mean, I'm not going to proof text because then
I'm not asking proof text. I'm asking where one author who wrote a section of the Bible or one of the books of the Bible that would teach.
Now they're going to get into here in a second. I'm going to skip past it because blah, blah, blah. You get the idea of it, right? So they're going to get into a moment here how this is actually kind of surprising to Joe Heschmeyer and this guy. I keep wanting to say Matt Schlatt, which is a totally different Matt. Anyways, Matt Frapp, I believe the guy's name is. They chose a bad clip here because, frankly, this Instagram clip that these guys are showing here, which is supposed to highlight how Mormons are sassy about this claim that that it's okay that Joseph Smith didn't believe in the triune God, that modern Mormons, most Mormons don't believe in the triune God, don't believe in this idea of Jesus being of the same, being homoousios with the Father, being of the same substance with the Father. That's okay because even Jesus didn't think so and didn't teach it. And basically, you heard the way the guy's just kind of stammering around. It's more of that. And so I agree with them. This is fair play to you, Latter-day Saints. This was a decent start. I don't think that it goes far enough, but we're going to skip ahead a little bit here so you can kind of see. The Bible doesn't teach that. Catholicism is cool. So, good. I mean, fair. We're not defending Mormonism as biblical. Even Mormons don't do that.
And Holy Ghost.
I'm not saying it does.
Oh, okay. So
In explicit terms, because again, Jesus doesn't come down and give a manual of theology.
When I was listening to this episode, I thought to myself, man, I was so excited to prepare my defense of Mormonism, an ex-Mormon defending Mormonism. And then they came up with this guy stepping right in it. I mean, Jesus didn't present a manual of theology. What the hell did he do? I mean, everything about the claims of biblical Christianity is centered around the idea that people didn't understand the nature of God until Jesus Christ was born and taught them not only who God really was and how God saves, but how they could be saved. If it's not about that, if the theology is not there, then there's no reason for the earthly ministry of Jesus. Indeed, I would put to you, there's good reason to believe there wasn't an earthly ministry of Jesus. And so if you want to believe in a biblical history where Jesus, as recorded in the Synoptic Gospels or the Gospel of John, was a man who lived on the earth and taught anything, you would have to believe that Jesus did, in fact, present a manual on theology, at least an instruction manual on how to get your ass saved. If he's not there to teach you how to get your ass saved, his whole mission is fraught with nothingness. It is meaningless and pointless, and a mission of a God who lived on the earth and was sacrificed for the sins of the world. If it was fruitless and meaningless, could not actually be the mission of a God, because God cannot fail on such a catastrophic scale and be God, I put to you. But this is not the defense. We're going to get to it here in a minute. I just want you to see a little further peek into the criticism and or defense. And I think this guy's getting to it right now, actually.
Oh, that's where I would say you're wrong, because now you're applying Jesus didn't teach the Trinity.
Well, I mean, of course, Jesus never said the Father and I and the Holy Spirit are three persons who share in one essence. We are co-equal in glory, co-eternal.
So if that was required for salvation, why didn't he teach it?
Well, I guess, what do you mean by required for salvation?
I mean, that's pretty cut and dry. I don't really know how we're just not delaying the inevitable here. This young Mormon pretty well handed to this guy in this conversation, pretty well handed his ass to him and told him, look, what do you mean not necessary for salvation? If you are going to be saved, you have to know how to be saved. If Jesus didn't teach you how to be saved, Jesus failed. And that's not something that a Christian is likely to believe. I'm not aware of any Christian who believed that the mission of Christ on the earth failed. Maybe it does exist, but I'm quite familiar. I would say I am quite. I'm not an expert, but I'm quite familiar with a lot of early Christian ideas, a lot of early Christian doctrine and documents. And I'm going to get to that here in a second. Some of these reasons why actually these Mormons are right on. Actually, they're pretty spot on. If the argument is, don't blame Joseph Smith for having an evolving idea of the Godhead or of the Trinity. Having an evolving Christology is the most Christian thing ever, right? So we're going to get there. And thank you for being here, Catholicism is cool. We don't beat anybody up. We're not those kinds of atheists.
Well, Catholics come to us and say we're not saved because we don't believe in the Trinity. Yeah, actually, the Catholic Church wrote to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we are the only denomination amongst Christianity to believe in the Trinity. I've never heard that.
I've never actually heard that from any other source other than Mormons. I'm actually prone to believe that's not true. So I don't know that this is a great argument. This is now devolving into another kind of argument, but maybe somebody can provide me with the links to that. But I'll be happy to be corrected on that.
And now you say Jesus didn't teach the Trinity. So now,
okay,
where in the scriptures does Jesus lay out the formulation of the Trinity?
I just told you he doesn't lay out a dogmatic formulation of the Trinity.
Okay, so Jesus failed to teach me my requirements of salvation. What up, guys?
I mean, fair enough. I don't think it goes far enough, but I'd say that's pretty solid, at least in terms of that argument. The thing that they didn't come prepared with I feel, is the early Christianity explanation for how it is not so strange. If there's a strange claim about Christianity, it is this idea that the Trinity was so essential an idea to salvation, and hence Mormons can't be saved, but without believing in the Trinity and or triune God. That there were, to believe that is the case for Mormons, you'd have to believe it was the case for Christians, and you just don't have the provenance of documents in history, in early Christian church history, to show that there was a contiguous idea, a doctrine of the belief that Jesus was of one substance with the Father and the Holy Spirit or Holy Ghost from the time of from the first century to around the 15th to 16th centuries, when the Bible is actually coming to a form that we could call finished. In other words, you've got 1,600 years of an evolving Bible that is that has the Trinity being laid into it over time, and that at the great reluctance of early church fathers and leaders who didn't believe it was true. And so I'm going to present to you a little more documentary evidence on that case. So that's what we're going to get started with here in a moment. I wonder how much of this I can show you. Yeah, let's not go over the rest of this. So we're going to have our hands full with this. I'm not even going to get into polygamy and or Joseph Smith and the teaching of the Curse of Ham. I'm going to go ahead and bail on the rest of that video. I want to show you Ward Radio, so that at least it is believable on every scale here that what I'm telling you is true. Not that I think you guys disbelieve me. I just think it's funny. Let's watch. So this is Ward Radio, everybody's favorite Mormon hate watch, reacting to several things. Now, here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to say this much. Ward Radio at least has Luke Hansen, and it has, as a regular and in this episode, and it has, dude's name. I'm sorry, guys. I'm old now. I'm an old ex-Mormon defending young Mormons. Anyways, his name will come to me. These two guys are no, it's not Jonah Barnes. I've learned to be nicer to Jonah Barnes since he left some nice comments on some of my videos, on some of our videos at the Church of Korihor. I'm not a big fan. But this other guy, what's his name? Well, we're going to see him here in a minute.
1978, a reason why anyone with even a drop of black blood was not allowed into the priesthood.
Pause.
And
this guy in the corner, what's his name? I just gave him praise, and now I'm spacing on his name. Anyways, this young man that you see here in the corner, for Ward Radio. I always want to say Midnight Mormons because I've been hate watching Ward Radio since they were Midnight Mormons back before Mormon. To say Mormon was a victory for Satan. And this young man that we see here, I don't know that he's that much younger than me. And apparently the books, by the way, you see behind him in this clip I'm going to show you are his books. He apparently writes fantasy novels. I haven't read them. Somebody else read them and tell me if they're any good. He is unafraid to call out Carden, the host, when he makes claims that aren't true. And apparently, as I have watched him, apparently his wife is in the theater. A lot of Mormons are. And he has used that in the past to explain, look, we go hard into some pretty conservative positions here on Ward Radio. And then I get to go home to my wife who is in the theater and has friends who are gay and has friends who are not straight and and get to defend to her the things I said on Ward Radio and why I or just sat here and listened to you guys going off on tirades on here on Ward Radio and then have to defend that I still believe in the church when my brethren in the gospel just say these things that frankly in defense of the church that I, being educated in the church, in church history, which he appears to be better than just about anybody they have on the show. He does actually appear to know the controversies behind Mormonism and have worked out in his own mind, worked out his salvation by dealing with the harder topics. And I respect that. I think he should leave Mormonism, regardless of whether or not he comes over to the Church of Korihor. I seriously doubt we'll get the guy over at church. But who knows that somebody would have said that about me at one point in time. And I started the Church of Korihor.
Yeah, completely wrong. The curse in the Book of Mormon has nothing to do with priesthood. Native Americans had the priesthood. This is a separate issue.
Okay, fair enough. Frankly, it's a little surprising, and they're going to get into this. We're going to skip past this, in fact, because, like I said, we're going to have our hands full with this Trinity thing. But the Book of Mormon doesn't say that Native Americans or indigenous peoples to Turtle Island, that these people, indigenous here, that their skin was cursed so that they couldn't receive the priesthood. It says that their skin, that they were cursed with dark skin to make them too ugly for their white-skinned, their fair-skinned Nephite cousins to want to have sex with and have children with. And then later, this doctrine, or separately, the doctrine evolved about the curse of Cain and the curse of Ham, and the idea, which already existed in their defense, and they point this out, that idea pre-exists Mormonism. There are people who believed that black people had been cursed by God because, either because they descended from Cain, the son of Adam and Eve, who killed his brother Abel, or because he descended from Ham, and that because Ham apparently knew his father Noah, knew his nakedness, meaning that he did dirty deeds to his own dad, and that for that reason his descendants were given black skin so that they could be servants to others, identified as a subservient race. A lot of Christians believed that at that time. Joseph Smith certainly was not the first. They do go out to defend, and again, I'm not going to have time to go over this because we got our hands full with this Trinity business. They do defend Joseph Smith as being not racist. I'm not sure why they go there, other than that Mormons tend to believe these days that Joseph Smith is frequently lied about, and they will come about with any case or argument to be made that if this is an inconvenient fact, if Joseph Smith was immoral in any way, that they that immorality must have been fabricated because he was a prophet of God, and prophets of God don't do immoral things, which is weird because if you read Mormon scripture, you would understand that's not the case. The Mormon scripture and even the Bible is replete with examples of prophets who disobey God and people who disobey God and have to be taught a lesson, and have to learn as they go. The doctrinal idea that's being thrown about and bandied about against Mormons that a prophet of God would never do, fill in the blank, ABC, is really not a biblical idea. I would put to you, it's not a scripturally supported idea to say that God wouldn't do that. It's a feeling people have. And a lot of us atheist critics of Mormonism, we point that at the Mormons, just like we pointed at the Christians and say, your prophets aren't better. People bring up, and then they start arguing amongst themselves about, well, why was your prophet a polygamist? It's like, well, why was Moses a polygamist? Well, Moses, by the way, fictional character. Well, but that was a different time. That was a different thing. And then they do the same humna, the same, waffling that the Mormons do about, well, Joseph Smith, we don't know if he actually had sex with his wives, or maybe he had sex with the ones who were adults. And don't give me a hard time about he had wives who weren't adults, and it's like, to say, well, boy, these Mormons they really have to defend their God. They have to defend their prophet as being a true prophet, even though he was a pervert, or even though he was, even though he taught different conflicting doctrines over time, including the Trinity. We're going to get into this. The idea that a prophet in every instance always agrees in his opinions and in his revelations and ideas, his doctrines that he presents later in life, agrees 100% with the doctrines from early in his life. Not only does that not ring true for Joseph Smith, it doesn't ring true for any of his successors. But furthermore, it doesn't ring true for any of the Bibles of the Old Testament, any of the prophets of the Old Testament, and certainly doesn't ring true for the apostles in the New Testament, nor any of the other authors of the New Testament. And so that's where I want to kind of focus right now. I was going to show a few more clips of this. Maybe we will do that. Maybe I'll save that for a little bit later. Okay. But you get the idea. So the framework is this. Here, let me read it because I wrote it out because sometimes I tend to ramble on this. Okay. Joseph Smith's evolving ideas about the triune God is as Christian as it comes. To claim that Mormons are not real Christians because Joseph Smith did not believe in a biblical triune God is to falsely believe that a triune God was a necessary and contiguous doctrine, that meaning without interruption, for salvation as a biblical tradition and Christian tradition to begin with. Called to begin with the mission and administration. Let me say that again. The ministry of Jesus of Nazareth and or his original 12 disciples and or their successors in the patristic traditions or the early church fathers. To say that between these persons in the 1st and 2nd century, there was at least somewhere an idea, a contiguous, uninterrupted doctrine that that God was 3 persons in one, or 3 personages, or 3 entities in one, and all of the same substance, is not biblically supported, is not supported historically. In fact, the opposite is very much in evidence, and I will go into that now. So just like Joseph Smith, Christians changed their Christology over time. Little side note, one thing that I didn't prepare any materials on, but I think is worth a note, probably the most significant figure in this that I'm not going to go over much is Arius. It was called the heretic, but is celebrated in many Christian traditions still today. But the Catholic tradition particularly labels him a heretic because he taught this idea and believed in this idea that was extremely popular at the time, not just with people you would traditionally label as heretics, but some of the early church fathers who had to kind of go quiet about the fact that they agreed with Arius. And that idea was that Jesus was not born the Logos, or in other words, he was not born as the Christ, even if he was fated to be the Christ, but that there was an adoption of Jesus as the Logos when he was baptized. This was a very popular idea in early Christianity, and you can see why. If you believed that it was possible to be saved, to be baptized, and be purged, be purified, sanctified through the blood of Christ and through obedience to the Father, it would make sense that you would believe that this man who was without sin went to his cousin, supposedly, and who tells him, I have need to be baptized of thee, and comest thou to me? And Jesus tells him, suffer it to be so, that all the words will be fulfilled. And so this idea that baptism was necessary to sanctify even Jesus, therefore how much more you as a sinner, it was popular. And Arius taught this idea, and not everybody agreed. As a matter of fact, I believe somebody correct me on this. Names I'm not great with. I want to say I forget the other guy's name. Anyways, the other perspective is the one that wins out eventually with the Nicene Creed, the Nicene Convention, in which not everybody who attended the Nicene Convention, this is something that the Mormons love to talk about, creedal Christianity, excuse me. The thing they don't mention is that not everybody this idea that Jesus was homoousios with the Father, which is Greek for of the same substance. You've heard the phrase it doesn't make an iota's worth of difference. That comes from this Christological dispute over whether Jesus is homoousios with the Father or homoiousios, the letter I in Greek being iota. And this was such a difference of opinion, homoousios meaning of the self-same substance, or homoiousios meaning of a similar substance, of a substance so similar it's almost indistinguishable, and yet is not the same, and yet is different enough to show that Jesus was Jesus and God was God, and to worship Jesus is fine and well, but only because he became of the same substance of God, not because he was God before he was even born. And this conflict drove Christians to kill each other, and it became a huge Christological dispute that had to be settled with the Nicene Creed and the Nicene Convention. At the Nicene Convention, this doctrine and idea, in spite of the fact that many prominent early church fathers frankly thought Arius was right. And if my memory serves correctly, even Origen believed that Arius was right. And so to say that so we see here that even up through the first of the creeds, including the Apostolic Creed, to decide that these early Christians must have been followers of the triune God, and there must have been a contiguous idea from Jesus to the Father, to the church fathers and the popes, ultimately, that was a necessary. I will repeat what this Mormon young man said. I forget his name, because that's a fair point. If you are to believe that Mormons cannot be true Christians without believing in the triune God, you would have to believe that the same was true about early Christians. And to say that it's not true about early Christians or to say that it is true about early Christians, they have to believe in the triune God, would be to disqualify, as far as I think, as far as you can see in the actual story of early Christianity, all the 12 apostles. St. Paul doesn't appear to believe it. The early Christians, like the Marcionites, don't believe it. The Arians don't believe it. The Gnostics don't believe it. And so it's absurd to say that all of these groups are heretics if you can't show me the group that is the non-heretics that's one contiguous group. So you would have to believe, at the best, I didn't get to play this clip. I didn't find it right away. That young man, they were arguing over there. The argument that gets made is that even though Jesus doesn't teach the Trinity, and even though Paul doesn't teach the Trinity, not in the authentic letters anyway, and the 12 don't teach the Trinity, it gets taught by God through his holy church. In other words, the popes. But that itself leaves out the fact that in the 19th century, even the Vatican had to print that in the original manuscripts, that original manuscripts in the Bible conflicted with the idea, but it's still a true idea, so you can't question it. It wasn't until Vatican II that you have a Catholic Pope, John Paul II, who is actually willing to come out and say, well, you don't have to strictly believe in this dogmatic idea of the Trinity in order to be saved. God can still love you. God can still forgive you. It's not until Vatican II. Okay, so this is this idea that that you have to believe in the Trinity is almost uniquely a Catholic idea, and to say that it is from the beginning a biblical teaching is just not true. And so to say Mormons can't be Christians, I would put to you, because their doctrine evolved to no longer include the triune God and the Trinity, is to not only shame Mormons, it's to shame early Christianity as well. In this, Joseph Smith, I'll give him this. I don't like Joseph Smith, just so we're clear. In this, Joseph Smith actually was in keeping with the tradition of the early Christians. He may have actually restored an ancient Christian practice in challenging the Christology of his day, because a lot of Christians in history did, especially in early Christianity. So I wanted to bring a few things to your attention. Let me see. I'll probably keep this video up in case we want to come back to it. I'm going to go to the first of the quotes I want to show you, and I went ahead and pulled up a website so you can actually see it. Okay. Yes. This is from the Gospel Coalition. Let me go ahead and pull it up on screen. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. I think that this is a fascinating story, and I thought it was very well written. I don't know Elijah Hickson or this, but I know this. I am familiar with this idea for a long time. I can tell you that this is definitely an academic argument that exists out there, but I really like the way that it was explained in the Gospel Coalition. Again, I can't vouch for this organization. I don't know them or anything about them, but this I thought was very good. Did you guys see this okay? Let me make sure that, oh, no. Good thing I checked. We'll get it. There we go. Okay. So this is the article that I was just telling you about. Okay. Watch this. This is very interesting. I think that this doesn't get paid enough attention to by those Catholics and or Protestants who want to accuse Mormons of not being true Christians. To put it in perspective, it's important to know that including a note here is not a recent development in the history of the church. This is referring to the Gospel of Mark. Christians have known for centuries that Mark 16, 9 through 20 might not have originally been part of Mark's gospel. And I just want to clarify because not everybody knows this, but pretty broad consensus, don't know for sure, But the pretty broad consensus is that the first of the Gospels that we think of as the Gospels is Mark, not Matthew. Mark is probably the first. What's the reason why that makes people heated under the collar is that Mark happens to mention the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, saying that at that time people didn't know that the temple would be destroyed, which was and even in early manuscripts, as I understand it, it includes that, which is curious because anybody who lived in Jesus' time wouldn't have known that the Romans would destroy the temple, Herod's temple, and sack the temple. Only somebody who had lived either lived through the Jewish war, which is in the year 70, and the sacking of the temple in the year 70, or had read about it, say, for example, in Josephus, which some scholars now are coming out to say, Mark, whoever Mark is, and we don't know who Mark is, that's a detail a lot of people don't know that's important. There are so many passages, I was just listening to this just the other day and it blew my mind, that there are so many passages of Mark that are so similar to Josephus that there are some scholars now putting forth the argument that whoever wrote Mark read Josephus, which means that Mark is even later. But pretty broad consensus, Mark is the first gospel and wasn't written until at least 40 years after Jesus, given that Jesus died sometime around the year 32, or around the year 30 Common Era. So very important to keep track of here. So now when it talks about this, Mark 16 is where we get the commission, the Great Commission. This is where we get Jesus teaching these ideas that are often brought up in the belief that Jesus believed in the triune God, regardless of whether or not he actually explained that I and my Father are one in the way that can be described as homoousios, or of the self-same substance. And so this is a believing, as far as I know, a believing Christian article about this. They've known literally for centuries that Mark 16, 9 through 20 was probably added in later. It wasn't an original part of Mark's gospel, which means wherever these ideas are repeating in the other synoptic gospels, Matthew and Luke, and even in the Johannine gospel or Johannine gospel, or the Gospel of John, they couldn't have been originally from Mark. They had to have been additions. Any ideas like this must have been additions from the other gospels, not the original gospel, and that's pretty important. One brother in Christ, it says, a monk named Ephraim, who lived in the 900s, wrote these words in a manuscript of the Gospels between Mark 16:8 and 16:9. Quote, in some of the copies, the evangelist finishes here, up to which point also Eusebius of Pamphilus made canon sections, but in many the following is also contained. In other words, this goes back, when we say going back centuries, we're talking all the way back to the 10th century. In the 10th century, you had Christians saying, this is probably not real. This is probably not true. We're adding it because we have enough manuscripts. I'm adding it because there are enough manuscripts that say that this is something that happened, but frankly, it's probably not true. And so you have this challenge in the early church before there is a cohesive Bible as we understand it now, or at least a cohesive New Testament as we understand it now. This idea from Mark, it was a later addition. Somebody added it. So you can believe that God, it makes sense to say that God or God's church added the doctrine into it because it was important. But consider for a moment that if that is in the 10th century, that means that you have almost 1,000 years of Christians going to hell because they don't have this doctrine. If you're going to believe that Mormons deserve to go to hell because they don't believe in the doctrine of the triune God, which I want to point out here in a moment is not strictly true. Okay. So yeah, so that's that section. I'm going to go ahead and close this and show you another one. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to get good at this, you guys. I'm going to get good at sharing screens. Right now, I'm still polishing up my skills with this StreamYard. With my luck, when I finally give up on StreamYard, I'll finally be good at it. Okay, I wanted to show you. Boom, boom, boom. Bart Ehrman. Everybody's favorite biblical scholar. Just kidding. My favorite biblical scholar to date, my favorite New Testament scholar is Richard Carrier. I'm actually not much of a fan of Bart Ehrman. Mainly for his nasty things he said about my friend Richard Carrier. But a lot of what Bart Ehrman says, he gets absolutely on the nose right. And there's no denying that. You know, when it's good, it's good. You guys can still hear me. We'll get to that. Catholicism is cool. That's a very good point. I like that you brought this up. I like this. Okay. That's a good point. We're gonna have to have ourselves a conversation. Yes. Some readers over the years. This is from the blog of Dr. Ehrman, who is an atheist who used to be Christian, to be clear, and is one of the best, one of the most well-read Christian scholars in the world, New Testament scholars. He doesn't have very nice things to say about Jesus' mythicists, but we could take it. Some readers over the years, he says, have wondered if this celebration of the Logos of God that becomes flesh, he's talking about John 1, the Gospel of John, owes more to Greek philosophy than to biblical Judaism. In other words, we're talking about, if you're not following along, we're talking about the first verse of the Gospel according to John, which says, in a way that seems to copy the Hebrew Old Testament, the first words of the Old Testament that says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, boom, boom, boom. It's given, we're meant to understand this is a retelling of that with Jesus at the beginning, which is, of course, an idea that so very much adversely contradicts the Arianism and this idea that Jesus more or less acquired the Logos, became the Logos, qualified for the Logos, if you will, was sanctified to be the Logos, or the utterance of God in the universe. If you think about it logically, this actually does make some sense, sort of, which is this idea that God can't create himself. If Jesus is in the universe that God created and Jesus is God, then God created Jesus, and if Jesus is God, then God created himself. God can't do that. And so the idea of the Logos, at least as it was taught by Philo of Alexandria and others, was this idea that Jesus, when it says in the Old Testament, in Genesis particularly, that God spoke and said, boom, 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 and then it was done. That when God spoke in the universe, that means that while God is from outside the universe, because he created the universe, he is manifest in the universe. And so that is the mind of God, the idea of God, the intentionality of God is expressed in the universe without needing to have originated in the universe, because it originated in God. So now here you have this Christological dispute. If Jesus is God, then he can't be in the universe unless he is a manifestation of God. And then you come up with everything else that you need to make modern Christianity, including Catholicism, like the idea that Jesus in his mortal body, in his mortal form, is necessarily inferior to God because he is from the universe. He's made in the universe. But in being the Logos, in being the Christ as we're given to understand from John, from the Gospel of John, he is still God because he was the Logos originally. He originated in God. And then you have everything you need to make the triune God, right? So this is what we're addressing, is how the Gospel of John is introducing this triune God so that we can set it up and say this was always a doctrine of Christianity, dates all the way back to Jesus and the apostles. So, but this is Bart Ehrman, and this is really good. I like this. Let me make sure I close all these ones that we're not coming back to. Here we go. Boom. So it says, some readers over the years have wondered if this celebration of the Logos of God that becomes flesh owes more to Greek philosophy than to biblical Judaism. It's a good question and hard to answer. Okay, so this is a definitive, but we're going to see why this is important. One thing that can be said is that this Logos idea does find very close parallels with other biblical texts, in particular with texts that speak of the wisdom, or in Greek, Sophia of God. Okay, if you don't know, many early Christians believed that Jesus' mother was Sophia, was the goddess of wisdom, was wisdom itself, herself, which was a very paganistic idea. But a lot of early Christians, you would have to argue, I think all early Christians were either pagans or Jews. And a lot of Christianity originated more in paganism than it did in Judaism. In fact, to where it is proposed in some doctrinal ideas that Christianity is more than anything originally a pagan idea, or at least it was a doctrine of the Greeks, from the Greeks, which makes sense why you see so much Homer, you see so much Sophocles, you see so much Socrates in the teachings of Jesus and of the apostles. In fact, if you don't know, there was once a book of the New Testament before it was compiled as the New Testament. There was a book that was called the Book of the Sayings of Jesus. How many of you out there wish that you had a book of the sayings of Jesus? How many times have you heard the criticism from mythicists like me who say, isn't it interesting that you have this man who supposedly was the Son of God, wisest man to ever live, never actually wrote any of his own words down? Well, did you know there once was one of those? There was a book of the sayings of Jesus. The problem is that the whole thing was plagiarized, and very obviously so. And any person who had read Greek philosophy would know that's actually one of the Cynics. Very good. And the Gnostic texts pretty universally panned as being nowhere. If there are no claims to be made, as I understand it, anyways, about the other gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas Iscariot, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, to compare them with the synoptics. But frankly, I mean, the origins of these gospels, of the Gnostic gospels, was pretty clearly sketched, not really meant to be understood as being the actual writings of these first century people. But then why would somebody assume that Mark or Luke or Matthew were? And I want to get into that here a little bit too. So fair point, Tim. Let me get back over here. Oh, did I minimize myself? Here we go. Back to Ehrman here. Sophia and Logos are related ideas. Both have to do in some respect with reason. Sophia is reason that is internal to a person. Logos is that reason that gets expressed verbally. Wisdom plays an important role in some biblical passages, none more so than Proverbs chapter 8, where wisdom is celebrated and is portrayed almost as hypostasis, that is, a character or feature of God that takes on personal characteristics as being separate from God. In other words, John, while we are given to understand, is defending Jesus as being one, as being homoousios with the Father, appears to actually be arguably originated in the idea that Jesus was actually created by wisdom. In fact, there are Christian texts, biblical texts that have been said in the past, been interpreted to be understood that Jesus meant to claim, or the early Christians meant to claim, that Jesus was the son of Sophia as the Holy Spirit, and that the Holy Spirit is Sophia. So there's no denying, at least, there are early Christians now panned as heretics by Catholics and by extension Protestants, but who believed that Jesus was not God the Father, as we're made to understand in the Trinity, and this idea may very well have been added later. In fact, it almost certainly was. And here I will present you yet the next case. Let's see here. Oh, I did want to bring this up before we get into the next part. This is just a segue. So my friend Steve Pinecker, you guys know Steve Pinecker? Steve, are you out there? Do you consider me a friend? We talk. Steve and I talk. I get a lot of good stuff from Steve, actually. Steve's good. Steve is just about one of the most well-connected people for non-Mormon in the Mormon content creator space, ex-Mormon content creator space. And he had made a video recently on this subject, and he said, where he mentioned that, by the way, not all Mormons disagree with the concept of the triune God. This is a good point. I have to give him kudos. I think I even texted him. Anyway. And he said, there are other churches. I believe he named specifically the Bickertonites, the Church of Jesus Christ, and the Church of and the Community of Christ Church, which was formerly the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which are also Mormon churches. They're not talked about as often as they probably should be, Mormon churches, because the big Mormon church, the Mormon church that truly embraced polygamy on a broad scale, is the one everybody knows today, because it's got hundreds of billions of dollars and millions of members all over the world, and supposedly, and allegedly. And he says, but people who separated, the Mormons who separated before Brigham Young's Exodus West, who read the Book of Mormon, which describes Jesus as being the same as the Father and being one with the Father, which it does, and who read the Lectures on Faith, Joseph Smith's Lectures on Faith, which also describes Jesus and God the Father as being of one personage, being that in the flesh God is Jesus, but prior to that he is a personage of spirit and doesn't have a body. Well, that was from the Lectures on Faith before the Book of Abraham and Joseph Smith's evolving story about the first vision. Now, only recently is the Mormon Church that you think of when you think the same Mormon Church that you think of when you think of Mormon Church has come forward to admit that there are at least 4 versions of the first vision, and in the first three, yeah, in the first 3 that were not the finished version that the Mormon Church publishes in Joseph Smith History today, and that the church uses in first discussions. The first 3, God the Father and God and Jesus and God the Father are either expressly one being or one amorphous God, or in at least one of those, Jesus is seen as standing on the right hand of God, which is also the way Jesus is described in the Bible, right? And so whether or not that means that Jesus and God are the same actual entity or a same actual being, it shows that there is this evolving doctrine over Joseph Smith's lifetime, taking God from one being, which is exactly what you would expect a Protestant boy from upstate New York to believe, into two separate physical resurrected beings who were from different worlds, if you will. We don't know supposedly where Elohim or Amen was from, if Kolob is his home world, or Kokab or any of the other worlds in the Kolobian system were his home world, or whatever. This whole idea, frankly, Joseph Smith's theology about God being a man who was resurrected, this was all very late in Joseph Smith's Mormonism. Little clues are added into it, but as you get closer to the polygamy, to the year that Joseph Smith was actively teaching polygamy and the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, you're seeing this evolution of the idea that God was once a man. And like God is now God, we too are gods in embryo and will become gods. It is still doctrine of the church that is the case, that human beings are gods in embryo. As far as I am concerned, I've never seen anything convincing me that they have changed it. It is fair to say, however, that there are some Mormons who don't believe it, and you're seeing more and more of them with what I call the Mormon history deniers. But these are people trying to go back to the understanding of Mormonism from Joseph Smith's early years. Now, but again, I just want to point this out before we move on to this last point, which is the Johannine comma. That there is such a thing as a Mormonism that believes in the triune God, and there is no mention that I have seen so far from Joe. Is it Hirschmeyer? I said it wrongly earlier. From any of these apologists for Catholicism or Protestantism, for the fact that Mormons who believe in the triune God, which there are, not mainstream Mormons. Well, no, there are even some mainstream Mormons who believe in it. If those people are technically saved, and do we need to go back into the one baptism argument, that there's one Christ, one God, one baptism? Does that have to do with priesthood authority like Mormons claim, or does it have to do with baptism by water or by fire and the Holy Spirit? Then we get back into immersion versus sprinkling. You get into all of these doctrine and ideas that, however you may feel about it in this or that Christian tradition, there's no denying that those things, those conflicts, don't originate with Mormonism. They are as old as Christianity. Well, they're as old as modern Christianity in any event. Going back to the 16th century, there we talk about the Johannine comma. All right. So let's go ahead and move that. And I had one more to show you. No, I don't. So we're going to leave it on me for just a moment. Okay, so let me explain the Johannine comma. I wrote it out so that I don't misspeak. Hopefully I get, but this was very last minute, so hopefully I threw it together in a comprehensible way. So the Johannine comma controversy shows that the Bible likely was changed to suit the triune God and not the other way around. That the triune God was made to suit the Bible, to follow the Bible. And that's an evolving doctrine. That means that if you're going to accuse somebody of not being a real Christian because their idea about who God is and what God is and how Jesus' relationship with God is, and therefore they are not real Christians, you're going to have to accuse pretty much all Christians up until the 10th century. Follow along. In the King James Version, 1 John, that's not the Gospel of John, this is the first epistle of John, who we don't really know who he is. Frankly, we don't know who either John is. That's important. 1 John 5, 7 through 8 reads that, quote, "In heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one." Sorry. Damn Adderall drives me out. And there are 3 that bear witness in earth. Now that's called the Johannine comma, Johannine meaning of John, comma being here a statement, a clause, a phrase, in which basically it is saying here that you have the Father, the Word, or the Logos, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, 3 personages, are all one, and there are 3 that bear witness in the earth. It says that in the King James Version. It doesn't say that in modern versions, namely like the NIV and the ESV. And that's for a very good reason. Very, very good reason. And that is that. I'm going to go back to the way I've written it out because I wrote it out well. See, in 1516, Desiderius Erasmus had excluded, as a biblical scholar, had excluded the clause of the Johannine comma from the Greek New Testament, the originally compiled Greek New Testament, or Textus Receptus, because there weren't enough manuscripts to justify including it, including the clause added in. But he added it in his 1522 edition of the Textus Receptus under pressure from Trinitarians who wanted the clause added in. The Trinitarians justified this by providing a copy of a Greek manuscript for 1 John that had the clause in it, and Erasmus caved and put it in. Scholars now believe that the Greek manuscript that Erasmus was given was forged to include the Johannine comma because it aligns with other earlier manuscripts that did not have the Johannine comma. Someone added it, likely translating it from the Latin into Greek, meaning that it is highly unlikely to be original to the text. It was added to justify the triune God, not the other way around. So, this is my case defending the Mormons, saying if you're going to say Mormons are not Christians because they don't believe in the triune God or the Trinitarian God that the Catholics believe in, and or Protestants by some extension do appear to still believe, you'd have to blame pretty much most Christians in the early days. We don't know exactly how many Gnostics there were, but you really can't say that the Gnostics believed in this. In fact, there's a whole book by Saint Irenaeus, not a book, I believe it's 5 volumes, called On Heresies. And this is something I get after the Mormons about. Mormons will say, you know, this and that criticism about Joseph Smith or about early Mormonism can't be trusted because it was written by dissenters from Mormonism, ex-Mormons. First of all, rude. Secondly, that's a totally valid way to do history. It's called critical historicity. Critical historicity, am I saying that right? Critical historiography. Yeah, I wasn't saying it right. Now I got it. Critical historiography is the idea that some things, some communities, spiritual communities, or communities in general, in history, their records have either been destroyed. Would make sense if you were competing with Christianity when it became the de facto religion of the Roman Empire and went out destroying texts of pagans. Remember, it's, Aristotle, Pythagoras, the great Socrates, the great Greek philosophers and thinkers. We only have their texts these days in the Western world because they were preserved by the Muslims. Well, I think is a fascinating thing to point out, because Christians destroyed their works because they were the works of pagans, and anything that pagans thought, believed, said at one point in time, at least in the Catholic tradition, was the work of the devil. And so you have these communities like the Gnostics. You have communities like the Marcionites, or Marcionites as they're generally called. You have the writings and beliefs of the Ebionites. This is another one that I didn't get a chance to talk about, but I wanted to just mention. These are groups that are mentioned in by Saint Irenaeus or his colleagues. As I understand him, some scholars still believe that Irenaeus probably didn't write all of On Heresies. Probably some of his colleagues in the church also added their 2 cents and threw it in there. But in any event, early Catholic priests in France had put together this history of the first heretics, of the groups of heretics that were considered to be competing with God's holy church. And it's only because of the criticism they make of these people, of how they are not true Christians, that we know almost anything about them, because so much of the records of those people were either destroyed or just not popularized, not included in our text and literature, or their texts and so forth were hidden away, or as in the case, as I understand it, with the Ethiopians, and I'm not an expert in the Ethiopian texts, they were such an elusive community that they just kind of kept to themselves and didn't make waves, and tried to hide out so that the other Christians, that particularly the Catholics, wouldn't come after them, and just kept to themselves. But the way we know about most of these heretics is because the Catholics wrote about how awful and evil they were, and gave us some ideas about where they came from and who they were and what they believed. And that's how we come to understand that there were Christians in the early days, from the very beginnings, from the days back in the church fathers, who believed that Jesus' mother was Sophia, who believed that Jesus lived in heaven. There are even some traditions that maintained that Jesus was a high priest from the heaven. This is, speaking of our friend from Ward Radio, Jonah Barnes. Thank you, Harry, for reminding me, that guy. I got into a bit of a tussle with him about this, and he was very gracious about it. I'll give him that. Over the Ascension of Isaiah, a text that pretty clearly lays out that the beloved of God, Jesus, was God's high priest, and that he, just as there's a high priest in the Jewish temple here on earth, so God must have a temple, because everything that's on earth must be in heaven. Very pagan idea. But this, if there's a God in heaven and there's a temple in heaven, then just as the high priest here on earth has to go into the Holy of Holies to commune with God, so God's high priest, has to go into the Holy of Holies in the temple in heaven to commune with him, to commune with the earth, and that high priest was the beloved of God, whose name was Jesus. And you can go back to Zechariah. There's another passage that this has been attributed as being connected to. Zechariah has a passage that talks about that there would come a Messiah in the future, whose name was Jesus, who was a great high priest. The more you look into it, the more you come to discover this appears to be that there were at least some Christians who believed that Jesus was not a man who lived on the earth, that Jesus was a man from heaven. He was a high priest, which may seem like an absurd idea, extra biblical, not from the Bible, till you look to a passage that's in the Bible that says of Jesus, "Thou art forever a high priest after the order of Melchizedek." And when you have the introduction of high priests and elders and a higher priesthood in Mormonism in the 19th century, lo and behold, this high priesthood gets referred to as the non-preparatory priesthood, or the Melchizedek priesthood, or the priesthood of Melchizedek. In other words, the more Joseph Smith reads of theology, and the more he talks to people who are actually experts in theology, and we now know, thanks to why do I always forget his name? Gotta get better with names, because I gotta start taking vitamins or something. I gotta start taking folic acid or something. We now know, because of the BYU library, that the Mormons are in possession of a list of books that Joseph Smith donated to the Nauvoo Library when he and the Saints founded a library in Nauvoo, the last city that was established by Joseph Smith. Well, at least directly, anyways, in Illinois. And that this man was, as his mother had said in her biography of him, before and or after it was altered. So it is said, it is believed, and I think it's probably true that his mother's biography of him was actually altered by the leadership of the church. But she does say that Joseph was well read, and that appears to be true. In other words, as Joseph Smith read more, his ideas about God evolved. And to say that that can't be how Joseph Smith's ideas about God evolve, because that's not how a prophet, because, reading theology and reading about God isn't how prophets learn about the nature of God, is not only disingenuous, it's frankly false. If you look at the history of how all the ideas about God that are being held up as purely biblical were added into the Bible over the course of more than 1,000 years, and had to be retroactively attributed to Jesus, had to be retroactively attributed to the apostles, had to be retroactively applied to the fathers, to the church fathers, so that it would look like there was one contiguous doctrine that God the Father and Jesus were of the self-same substance and of the same substance with the Holy Spirit, when the fact of the matter is that we see all reason in the world through critical historiography, through looking at the history of how these documents were translated, to even the pressure of people like Erasmus getting pressured when he had every reason not to include the Trinity in the Bible, being pressured and even tricked into adding the Trinity into the Bible. None of that would have happened if it was a biblical teaching that the Trinity is the true nature of God from the beginning. So when the Daily Wire comes after Mormons, trying to say that Mormons aren't real Christians, which is a weird thing for Ben Shapiro to be championing it all, but I get it. He's got to cater to multiple audiences, and he knows that he has no bread and butter without evangelical Christians. But I do have to say, these Mormons are making a good case for why, and this is now, by the way, this is now evolving to where we are hearing for the first time from Latter-day Saints and from Award Radio and others. This is being presented apparently by Boylan and his crew. I don't like mentioning him, but Robert Boylan and his crew and others, that if you are Mormon and you are still subscribing to the Daily Wire, you are actually, that's fine, but you are paying anti-Mormons to preach against Mormonism, and let that sit with your conscience. And I have to say, fair. I mean, Ben Shapiro made his bed, he's got to lie in it. And I don't know how good the data, the analytics that Ben Shapiro has are. That did I end that with a preposition? It was a prepositional phrase. Anyways, I don't know how good analytics Ben Shapiro is getting, but I think these Mormons are actually probably right, that if all the Mormons do actually cancel their Daily Wire subscriptions, these guys may live to regret that they did this. It all depends on how many Catholics and how many evangelical Christians suddenly feel reanimated in their enthusiasm for the Daily Wire, based on the Daily Wire's willingness to shame Mormons as not being true Christians. And frankly, I just don't know how good of a gamble that is. It'll be an interesting thing. But for what it's worth, ex-Mormon who thinks that Joseph Smith was a pervert, a liar, a big liar, a charlatan, and a fraud, an all-out fraud. I have to say, that's in keeping with Christianity from the beginning. And for these Christians to start attacking my former faith community for saying that, and saying, well, this isn't in keeping with Christianity, they're either wrong or flat out lying. And there it is. This ex-Mormon defended the Mormons. You're welcome. We'll see if people like this, maybe we'll do another one where I specifically go out to defend, of all people, Jacob Hansen, because apparently Jacob Hansen is the one that they really like to come after right now, and we didn't even get into Jacob Hansen. It was a curious thing. So, what did you guys think? Was that any good? It was, at least it was different. Am I right? I wanted to show you guys a few things here. Remove that. Well, we're done with this. Let's stop talking about Christianity. Let's talk about something good. I hope Catholicism is cool is still with us, and that you were impressed with my presentation. And in answer to your question earlier, I forgot. He said where he said, yes, beat me up. We don't beat up any Catholics here. There are Christians who beat up Mormons at one point. But ex-Mormons, we get beat up a lot less. And I have to say, on behalf of Mormons, and ex-Mormons, don't beat up on these Mormons. They got problems enough. Nobody beat each other up. You guys, I don't know how many of you were here with us at the beginning, where I was showing our new godless hymn, which is called Look Up. But I'm very excited about the future of the Church of Korihor and our effort to try and help people who are less fortunate, and trying to find, thank you, Tim, and trying to create community around people's spiritual development. And the way that we are doing that, and just want to throw up once more time, throw out there one more time. If you want to help us by sending food, by sending blankets, by sending money, or by purchasing items that are on our Amazon list to go out to our efforts together with our partners at Southern Utah Mutual Aid Coalition for immigrant families that are in a dangerous circumstance right now, you can go to korihor.org, click on Give, or just go to korihor.org/give, and you will see where you can send money. You can make a purchase through our Amazon list, or you will find our address here in St. George, where you can take items that you have and make a sacrifice out of your own stock, and be able an inventory, and help us to serve these families, and also to take them out to the streets where we have people who are sleeping rough. I'm going to be doing, before I head back out to Virginia in May, June, I'm going to be doing a couple more runs for blankets, because it is still pretty cold at night up in Salt Lake City, and also here in Las Vegas, where not nearly as cold at night in Las Vegas, but still does get cold. And there are people out there living on, people sleeping rough. And so we're giving that our final push for the blanket drive until here in about the second, third week of April. We're going to switch away from focusing so much on the blanket drive, and start focusing and redoubling our efforts on growing the application, and which is to say the Korihor app. I want to switch over to that. We're going to talk about that now. Thank you so much to those who are giving to the Korihor app. I wanted to show you some exciting things. I want to thank you guys for giving to our missions to serve immigrants and to serve the unsheltered. I want to tell you about the Korihor app. I know that some of you were here when I talked about it before, but nobody told me they didn't like it. And frankly, I don't care, because it's my show. I wanted to show you the Korihor app. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to share. screen. Horror. That's a whole new cool look, man. Here we go. Okay, so you're looking at here the desktop version of the Horror app. Basically, right now, the screen that you're seeing here is the U screen. Let me switch over actually to the mobile version. Looks a lot cooler. This is the U screen. It takes a moment to load. I actually designed it so that it would load like that, where it has like the little shadowy thing. I did a lot of work with the AI making this possible. But basically, this screen is kind of like a Twitter, and it's called the U feed. When you complete a training, it comes up with, these are called tiles. You have this is a caring post at the top that says "Do you overview," and then there's system tiles like this one, beta test hub. That's just informing me that there are new ideas in the beta test hub to review. I can close that, and then you see side by side in this kind of 2-post layout, images and text posts that kind of load like Twitter. Unlike Twitter or X, you can post any length that you want. Yeah, I don't think we have any limit at all. Don't put a book up in there, but you know, you can post any length that you want, and then basically what happens is that after 300 pixels, well, about 250 pixels, it starts to fade out towards the bottom of the tile there, so people can actually see, just kind of get a glimpse at what your post is about. If you post a shorter, update, the text size is slightly larger, so it draws more attention. That's a good way to encourage people, kind of how Facebook and does the same, to kind of encourage people, hey, if you can get your ideas condensed down into a shorter and simpler thought, it's a good way this is a good way to do that. For example, you see this one about now Mormon history deniers are claiming that Joseph Smith was never a Freemason, etc. So then you have these caring posts. Caring posts are ways in which, again, nobody pays for advertising on our platform. It's a nonprofit platform. Well, it's run by a nonprofit organization, which is the Church of Korihor. Hi, that's us. And for example, you see here, this is a fundraiser where it actually shows how much money has been raised for the goal. For example, here we're raising $500 for the next round of updates to the Korihor app, and I've given $5. I've just been showing this to people lately because it actually works. I'm just so excited that I actually made a thing work. So our app is pretty badass. And then you can click on these. Now we have video. We have video based carrying ads. This is going to be so much fun, you guys. We're going to have all these cool features in here. It's also got kind of like an Instagram type thing happening. Look up at the corner there. Here, let me do that again. When you click on an image post, this is so cool. I've been focused on this for like over a month. You guys have been working my ass off on this thing. When you click on any image in the app, especially on your phone, which is really designed mainly to be used on your phone, though technically you can use it on your computer. You tap on it, you'll see it says loading in the upper left-hand screen. See that, the upper left-hand corner? And then it shows you how many images it has loaded. So I worked really hard on this. I fought with the AI programming bot to make this thing actually happen. So basically what happens is, if you click on something like related to Star Wars, for example, what happens is it goes through and loads images. If you clicked on an image, it loads that image and all the other images that are posted with it. So for example, this is for tonight's episode. I had the AI, I told it, in a medium shot, let me expand it. In a medium shot still from a 35mm space opera film, Ex-Mojo is a heroic character in a dark spacecraft wielding a bright green lightsaber, stepping between a terrified group of Mormon YouTubers, clashing his green lightsaber against the red lightsaber of an unseen villain. And so this is, I thought the AI did a pretty damn good job at making me look awesome. And then these frightened Mormons. behind behind me. I was impressed. This is using Nano Banana Pro was the model. But so let's say this is designed, by the way, so that I can use my mouse to mimic gestures, finger tap gestures. So if I want to go through all the images that I had posted, you'll see that there's these little green dots down or gray dots down the bottom that show you, oh yeah, there are other images here. I can swipe left and you'll see another image, and again, another image and another image, so that you can see the images that are posted with that image. All of them, by the way, I look awesome. I make a fantastic Jedi. However, that's not the 1 in 12. The 1 in 12 is you can swipe up and it takes you to the next image. Now, if this is all driven by hashtags primarily, and also by who you follow. So first of all, if you tap on something that's hashtagged, like if that's hashtagged with Star Wars, which I forgot to do, the next image, the image that pulls up, if there is any image to pull up, will be another Star Wars image. And then you keep going until it runs out of that, and then it loads more images from people that you follow. So the idea is that to more or less mimic a similar, not exactly the same, but a similar experience of going through images in a Instagram style feed. So basically, this For You page or You page, it is a training platform. It's a Twitter type of platform, and it's kind of an Instagram, including sexy pictures of your favorite spiritual leader wearing a hat that says "I love beaver." And looking very sexy. I mean, sexy as fuck. And then I love to put art there. I would love for the Korihor app to be a great place for artists to post their art, including myself, by the way. Been drawing again. Going to get back to painting here pretty soon. I would love for artists to be able to find a home on the Korihor app. And one of the ways, and this is why I need beta testers who go to Korihor.app, excuse me, and sign up, where we can start having conversation and you can start contributing to the ideas and helping me to find bugs in the application, which runs in a web browser. So it should work on any mobile device. It should work on any desktop. You don't have to download it. It works inside the browser. And so far, I see no major problems with it. It works great. All the app features work the way you would expect them on a downloaded app, but we don't have to conform to any of the BS that Apple and Google are throwing at these people who are developing apps. Basically, if Google or Apple can't make money off of the Korihor app, if they can't make ridiculous sums of money off of the Korihor app, which is supposed to be a corporation-free, bot-free, safe environment where children are not in danger, unlike others, every social media app out there. We have social media apps like Facebook banning people like my friend Tim, while at the same time having to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines or in damages, excuse me, in places like New Mexico and who knows where else in the future, because they knowingly endanger children. The Korihor app is the answer to it, in my hope and aspiration for what we're building here. I want to create a safe community where everybody who's on the app is a person who has a heartbeat, who is an adult person who knows what they're doing, what they're getting themselves involved in. If eventually we make something where parents can incorporate and bring their children into an experience, a sharing experience that is moderated, that is monitored, and that is protecting them from adults, perverts who would abuse them, or from peers who would bully them, well, then maybe that will be a thing that comes down the road. When I say down the road, I'm thinking logically, if it happens, which it may not happen, We're talking 3, 4, 5 years down the road, maybe. For the most part, I think social media, like church, is for adults, and including that I don't want to have to babysit anybody about, hey, is this picture that you posted, is this a nude that is art or is it smut? I don't want to have to babysit that. I don't want anything to do with that. If nudity offends you, don't look at it. And if you don't want to see it, maybe we'll create a process whereby you can say, don't show me explicit content. And then we create a process whereby people label their own content saying this, is for people who don't mind seeing, this or that. I'm not saying that that this is going to be a platform where people can post smut. I very much want it to not be a place where people can post smut. However, I also think that it's absurd that we have these social media networks where people can post pseudoscientific nonsense about the earth being flat or about vaccines causing autism or something like that. And yet, if a mother nurses her baby in a live stream, it gets taken down. And I look at it and I think, this is absurd. What could be a better manifestation to all of us about how backwards our society's values are when we punish people for doing something that is normal and healthy, and we reward people for doing something that is dangerous and puts our families in danger and puts our community in danger. And I'm hopeful that the Cohort app will be a solution rather than contributing to the problem. If I find it contributes to the problem, I'll shut the whole thing down. But I don't foresee that happening. But this is, for example, this is a beautiful painting that I found on Pinterest, and I downloaded and uploaded it here specifically to show it for this reason. I couldn't find who the artist was. I think I eventually did find it. But this is a problem on Pinterest. It's a problem on that I find on Pinterest, that I find on Instagram and other places, is that people will post this beautiful art. And the two questions that you'll see in the comments over and over again, especially on Pinterest, which normally I like Pinterest and post a lot on or not post a lot, but post some on Pinterest of my art, other people's art, and share it. You'll see two questions that keep coming up. One is this from a real artist or is it AI? Which is a good question. Are we just making this problem of AI generated art having to compete with human created art? Are we making it better or worse? And I try to be very conscious of that because I am an artist. And yet at the same time, for the Church of Cohort, I do use, as I said in the statement I published earlier this week, we do use AI. As you just saw, we use AI. So should the rule be that you don't post AI generated stuff? Or should the rule be, if you're going to post something that's AI generated, it can't be what? It can't be something that doxes somebody, shames somebody, or whatever. How many rules do we have to have? In what ways should we decide? This is a free speech platform and you can do what you want with it. But should there be, so that we are encouraging in a constructive, productive way, say if it's AI, you have to mark it as AI, as AI generated. And if it's not marked as AI generated, and somebody is able to discern from it that this appears to be AI generated, and there's no attribution to an actual artist, to a human artist, maybe it goes into a jury somehow in which somebody says, let's approach the person who posted it and or approach the other people who are experts in this in the community and say, is this AI? Is this AI generated? And then somebody else can mark it as AI generated, not to get it taken down, but so that people who say, I find people do this, as people like myself who love art, a lot of times we find ourselves looking through art to see the art. and to appreciate the artist. And so when we find that there's all this AI slop out there, it's frustrating, you know. And I wish I had a switch, a toggle that I could throw and say, show me art, but don't throw me any AI generated crap. Show me the stuff. Show me something created by artists. And don't show me any of this AI generated stuff, even if it's good. Because a lot of these AI, it is true that AI is creating beautiful art now. And there is something to say for the fact that if you can prompt art well, then what's the difference between that? Is AI just another paintbrush? It's an interesting question, which is what I'm here to tell you. Sometimes I just don't want to see anything AI generated. I just don't. I don't mind seeing it most of the time when I'm not looking for art. But when I'm looking for art, it's infuriating that I just see AI generated, AI generated, AI generated. And on Pinterest, the problem is that Pinterest labels even art that's made by humans as AI modified, even when it has no basis for justifying that that is true. And so you'll come across something beautiful and you're like, my gosh, that's a beautiful, who is the artist? And that's the second question that you keep seeing come up again and again on Pinterest, especially, is people will say, who is the artist? And the answer that if there usually is no answer, or if there is an answer, somebody puts up it's AI generated. But again, sometimes the people who put up that it's AI generated are bots who post everything as being AI generated, so that people will go, damn it, more AI crap. And so, and I'm looking at this going, okay, wait a minute. Maybe we need to elevate some users on the app who can show I'm an art historian. When I'm looking at a Monet, I know it's a Monet. When I'm looking at a Van Gogh, I know I'm looking at a Van Gogh. If the Van Gogh has been, if I look at the Indian yellow in the Van Gogh and see that that is not Indian yellow, or that is not, or I'm looking at a Picasso and seeing, okay, the blue in Picasso's blue period, this should be Berlin blue, which is now called Prussian blue. And that's not Prussian blue. So this has been modified. Somebody's photoshopped it. It's still the image. It's still the artwork of this artist, but it has been manipulated in some way to deepen the colors or increase the contrast or whatever, or because it was photographed in a light that didn't exhibit the colors well. Whatever it is, I think it would be good to have experts who can clarify and say, this may seem to you like it is AI generated, but actually it's a Bouguereau. This may seem like it's AI generated, but it's actually, or Paul Rubens, And so I would like to see a platform, the first ever social media platform, where we can tell you within some degree of certainty the images that you're looking at are either AI generated or they are generated by a human being, and you have the option to turn off the AI generated ones so that you don't have to look at them, especially for people who are artists and don't want that in their feed, or people who are art collectors and are looking for art to buy or to commission, looking for artists to follow and so they can commission them. And so I would love to see a day in the future where people get on the Korihor app to exhibit their artwork, because it is the last social media platform where an artist can earn a living without having a platform that's going to take an absurd amount of their profits in commissions, like is the case with so many of these art websites like Saatchi or even Etsy. And so I'm like, there's so much abuse of artists out there, if you ask me. And Pinterest has become a part of the problem. Instagram was supposed to be a part of the solution, but with the way that Meta has gone full balls to the wall, forgive my expression, forgive the crudeness of the expression, about selling corporate advertising, they're now as big a part of the problem. Meta's as big a problem as anything. And again, there's a reason why Zuckerberg's having to answer for harm being done to children on these applications, because we know they hurt people and they hurt kids especially. And I would love to see a day in the future where we have a social media app where small artists, emerging artists can make a real career. And of course, I'm thinking about myself in this, but more importantly, I'm thinking about all these emerging artists out there. Think about my daughter who makes art and panics all the time that nobody will ever buy her stickers, nobody will ever buy her posters, because somebody out there can just take what she creates, train a large language model to create art based on her characters and her unique designs, and just mimic her art with their own creations. I try to reassure her, people don't want that. People want to support an artist, and I believe that's true. But where do they go? When even art focused websites are selling the AI generated stuff next to the rest of the stuff, next to human generated stuff. How is an artist supposed to compete? I don't know. And I want to find out. And like I was showing you a moment ago, I can, with vibe coding, which ironically is using AI to code to take over the minutia work of coding. If I could afford, if I had the funding to pay a whole team of developers to develop this app, I would do that, but we don't have that. So for now, for the investment so far of about $700 worth of investment, a little under $1,000 anyway. We have so far developed an app that functions basically like Twitter and Instagram, and with a few extra features unique to the Church of Korihor, which I think is pretty freaking awesome. Again, see, it's like this, for example, is an AI generated image, whereas this, I eventually found out it was Collins, I want to say is the artist name. So this is another thing. So this is a thing that I'm thinking about is, if somebody is an artist, is it like an art history major or an art consultant and does this for a living, we might, flag certain images as they come up to that person, say, hey, do you recognize who this, is this a human made art? Do you recognize the artist? Because it didn't get tagged by the person who posted it, and then they can contribute to it. So we can kind of contribute together and make this experience a better experience for everybody. So that's it. So basically, that's one screen of the Korihor app. I mentioned this last on Wednesday, so I'm not going to go back into it. Eventually, the Sage will be another feature, but today I don't want to talk about that yet. Today I want to talk about this. So when I click on this caring post, it says, "Do you overview? Have you tried our secular meditation practice?" If you click on that currently, which don't do, those of you who get invited to the app here in the near future, I would recommend not doing it. It takes you to our website, thekorihor.org/overview. It's a little frustrating for me to admit this, but that page on korihor.org kind of sucks, because I developed an app back before I knew how to do this properly that had all my innovative ideas on how to organize recordings of our compassionate meditation practice that we call Overview, which is named after the overview effect, which is what astronauts experience when looking down on Earth from orbit and realizing that borders are artificial, that wars are ridiculous and stupid, that we have a fragile planet where we all have to share, and there are asteroids running at it right now. And we tend to think that our governments are invested in protecting us from meteorite impacts, and it turns out it's not true. And And we play a dangerous game every day we wake up alive on this planet. And there are meteorites that come alarmingly huge meteors or space rocks that come hurtling past our planet every day and scary close. And some of them enter our atmosphere and land out in the middle of nowhere where nobody sees. And so we don't pay attention. But one of those asteroids killed the dinosaurs, almost certainly. We know where it struck, and one could hit us. In fact, in 2032, one is scheduled to hit our moon, almost certainly to hit our moon. And I've talked about this before. People get upset that I do, but it worries me, because there's a non-zero chance that it will miss the moon and it will hit Earth instead. And there is a non-zero chance that it will miss both the moon and the Earth. But in any event, we know this rock is headed towards us, and if it lands where NASA has projected it to land, it's very plausible that it could take out human beings with it, or animals, especially marine life in the Atlantic. And so, anyway, now I've gone off on a tangent, but Overview doesn't work very well. The app, in fact, I'm going to be taking it down off the website because, frankly, it doesn't work at all. And so today, however, can I pull it up? Well, anyways, I'll show you where it's going to go. Basically, today I was able to add, if you swipe through here by just swiping right to the play feature here. This is the play screen. The top portion of this is going to be a kind of play on demand, is already a viewer on, what do you call it? It's a streaming platform, kind of like Netflix. Then we have the gaming platform, which is tables, and then library. I'm not really sure that we'll use library. I might keep that. I might get rid of it. We'll see. But in the development environment version, or the testing environment of the app, I've already published, so I'm not going to show it here, but soon you'll be able to see a library of overview. So of overview meditation sessions that you'll be able to listen to. And so basically, while you are scrolling through, having fun, posting your images, posting your post updates, interacting with other people, liking their stuff, commenting, starting conversations, getting involved in conversations, every once in a while you'll come across one of these caring apps, caring posts that will say, "Hey, when was the last time that you dropped in and had a little and took some time away from the busyness of life and spent a little time working on yourself, spent a little time working on your connectedness, spent a little time flexing your consciousness?" And I love this idea, however we make it work. And again, I'm going to need people who can help me to come up with the good ideas and to improve my ideas on how this should work. I love this idea that this is going to be the first social media app that prompts you, instead of to buy insurance or to take out $200,000 and go back to school in an online program that everybody knows is designed to keep you from actually finishing, so that you actually end up having to pay for this student loan for the rest of your damn life. Instead of refinancing your mortgage, or buying a car that you don't need, or buying buying crap that you don't need off of Amazon or eBay or Temu. What if it was prompting you to work on becoming a better person, and to work on your anger management? I could use a good reminder. I've talked about this before. People think of me as a pretty chill laid back guy these days. People who knew me from when I was younger, they'd tell you that that's not entirely Joe Rollins. I have this mean streak in me, and I've had to work on that. And I look around today and I see young men particularly who are bright, they are curious, they are um, they are brave and bold. They're everything their parents raised them to be good men. And then they got a little Jordan Peterson under their skin. They got a little Ben Shapiro under their skin. They got onto some incel server. They got onto whatever, 4chan or whatever, right? And now all of a sudden they're sending dick pics to strangers. They're talking about I talked about on Wednesday this kid Kai Schwimmer, part of what I'm calling the LDSS movement, who actually posts to his community who pay him for this content, actually posts about how he thinks women shouldn't be allowed to vote. And it's one thing when it was an isolated incident where some young man just, goes off the rails and says something stupid. But in the age of social media, we see these young men growing a following of abusive, angry young men who, if somebody talks to them about consent, they say that you're a cuck or a simp. If somebody talks to them about safety, and particularly safety of women, they call you a libtard. If they talk, if anybody tries to talk to them, their parents, their teachers, anybody in the community, they answer in the most degrading, hateful, angry ways that are hurtful to everybody. And by and large, a lot of these young men are being inducted into extremist religious ideologies, including Christian ideologies, but others. But it's not like they have a monopoly on it. There are atheists who do it too. And these young men need better role models. And they need a platform. They need platforms where they are prompted regularly instead of being prompted for whatever a corporation or an organization will pay for advertising, like on Facebook, etc. I mentioned this a while ago, and I know I'm off on a tangent now, but sometimes we do this at the end of the night. When I turned 40, I started getting ads on Facebook regularly about you can show your wife what it means to be God's good steward in life. And I thought, and of course, as you can imagine, good conscious atheist a polyamorous atheist that I am, I went, gross. That's disgusting. I don't want to see that crap. And so I started marking it as, this doesn't apply to me. Okay. Go and find some of these suckers out there who believe that crap and hawk them your wares. But I kept getting it. I kept getting it and kept getting it and kept getting it and kept getting more and more and more and more of these. As soon as I turned 40, apparently these Christian pseudo-scientific ministries could target me on basis of I lived in Utah, I was 40 and over, and I was married, according to my profile. And so of course, I wanted to know about how Jesus was going to make me a better lover for my wife. And I'm like, this is foul. This is stupid. This is disgusting. And Who can I complain to? You think Mark Zuckerberg wants to hear it? He doesn't care. I contacted a few of these ministries. I would send them messages and say, look, I don't know what you put in your targeting, but you're reaching an atheist who's pretty pissed that I'm seeing your ads. It's disgusting. You're disgusting. I don't want anything to do with you. Take me off your list. Please exclude me from your marketing. And please, in the future, try to take a little more care that you're not paying to advertise to somebody like me, because frankly, it just makes me angry. And no response. They don't care. They just did not care. Eventually, I went out of curiosity. I started clicking on these ads to start to look through. How can it possibly be worth it to these people to pay to advertise with such a broad brush to all these people, including me, and to not give a shit when people like me, complain and say, this is BS. Your church, you're crap. Your God is crap. Your teachings are crap. I don't want anything to do with your pseudo psycho babble. Fuck off. And I couldn't get them to stop. And as I looked at this, I realized that these online programs that they were getting these men to sign up for, they would start out at rates like $100. They would like discount it down. It's like, if you buy today, you'll get access to this whole training program, like 50% off. So it would come out to somewhere around $50 to get access to basically being preached at digitally through your computer or your phone about how you are a crappy Christian. That's why your wife is thinking about leaving you. And apparently that's true about enough men in Utah who are married that's a concern for them, and that it's a concern that they would pay for. And then, of course, once they get you in, then they funnel market you into paying, for the $500 advanced training seminar. Just put it on a credit card. What do you have to lose? It's about saving your marriage or whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's about being a righteous, business owner. Eventually I started getting, I guess because I was self-employed, I started getting ads that say, God wants righteous Christian husbands who are business owners to, come to our 2-day mastermind, kingdom business, celebration weekend retreat in Honolulu. It's only $5,000. You bring your wife in. And it's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Just because I own my own business doesn't mean I have $5,000 to throw away on being preached to about Jesus and how Jesus wants me to save my marriage. And I'm like, there are men who just throw their money away on this shit. I just, it blows my mind. And then to think, what must these young men in their 20s and 30s, what must they be looking at? And then, of course, now that AI has become a common thing, I get to see it all the time. Ads that come up on my feed, and no matter how much I say, I'm not interested in this, it's always, I don't know how many of you have seen this out there. I'd love to know, especially breakdown by gender expression and identity out there. Do you see these ads? I'd be curious if women are seeing these ads too. And do these people care? Are they targeting gay people? Are they targeting trans people at all? Is it just they assume all of us are straight or whatever? I see these ads now come up for AI chatbots and for a girlfriend. Okay, this is like this is now a phenomenon in our society that people are making tons of money apparently off of these apps. Where don't bother getting a girlfriend now that nobody answers. None of the women on Tinder answer any of the ads or chat people up anymore, pretty much, which is a whole thing. There are like whole news articles now being written about how women just don't date anymore because it's become such a toxic environment, and they're scared, and they're frustrated, and they're fed up. And there's a whole movement. I think they call it the "Fine, I guess I'll be single" movement or something like that. Or it's I guess it's not worth it movement or something. I forget what it was called. I saw it the other day. An article on this about how many women are so fed up with dating they've decided they're even if they're not asexual, they're going to live like they are, and so in effect they are asexual. And I'm like, boy, we really have this whole society where people need to heal from their trauma, and especially because men won't do it, these women, who are straight and would love to find a boyfriend, love to find a husband, love to find what's the next love of their life or what have you, are out here just going, there literally is no one. And I think we did these young men so dirty by not providing them with better role models and with men who have a platform and venue and who feel responsible to be better role models to these young men. And we all share in it. I share in it. We all share in the responsibility for it. And just because I can sit here and think, look, there was never a moment where somebody presented to me and said, "Hey, don't you know you're supposed to be a better example to young men out there?" And I said, and I don't remember being offered the choice to it. At the end of the day, what difference does it make? We're not doing it. And if we're not doing it, this is the result. And I can't help but feel responsible for it. Even though, again, I didn't choose any of that. But, so we're living in this day and age where now I'm seeing these ads that come up. And they have AI generated characters that are like a little orphan girl asking you in this video ad, are you just going to hit me too? Or are you just going to hurt me too? And then and then it comes up with like the options of things that you can say to her. And I'm sitting here looking at it going, the fuck is this? This is being in a world where Mark Zuckerberg won't let you promote your OnlyFans page on his social media page, won't let you promote, it won't let you promote a church. I've run into nothing but roadblocks about promoting the Church of Korihor, but we'll promote these Christian churches that are selling this toxic program, these toxic false pseudo psychology, pop psychology programs that are marketed to help you stop being gay, marketed to help you be a better, steward for God's kingdom, win back your wife. Like the language, you should see the language they use in these ads that say things like, your wife doesn't want you to listen to her. She wants you to be the man that God wants you to be. It is disgusting. And I'm sitting here, it's like, how is it that their algorithm can show me art that I want to see, can show me Star Wars clips I want to see, show me never-ending clips from my favorite shows like Game Changers. I love me some Dropout TV, and comedy and stand-up comedians that I love. Me, the algorithm knows me so well that can serve up all this stuff that I love on the internet, and then I see this chatbot ad for this AI, this AI generated orphan girl will let you rescue her from her situation, and then you decide how the rest of the story goes. And I'm sitting here looking at like, why am I the target audience for this? What about I love Star Wars, and Jordan Jensen and Taylor Tomlinson tells you, I want to see that. I want to be a part of that. What is it? Just that they throw it out there and say, if this person is male, show them our ad because they'll probably buy it. I've never bought any of them. Why do I keep getting ads for them? I never sit there and watch the whole thing. And now I've just quit engaging with it. But for a while, every single one that came up, I would flag it and report it and say, I don't want to see this crap anymore. And I couldn't convince the algorithm to stop showing me this stuff. Finally, I just took all my Facebook notifications off. I was so fed up with it. I'm like, this is disgusting. I'm a father. I have a daughter. I have a community of women who are sick and tired of this toxic, with the way that all this toxic language and this toxic crap is making men completely unbearable in our society. And I don't want to see it. It takes a lot for me to get to a point where I can't see something. It's like I can see it. Usually I'll say, I can see it. I can get pissed about it. And then I can let it go. And this has gotten to a point. The toxic masculinity in advertisements on Facebook has become so disgusting. And so much of it is spiritually driven, religiously driven, that I'm looking at it and saying, I am so fed up and frustrated with it. I have to turn Facebook off so that I don't get angry about it and revert back to that angry Joe guy who's still there. I keep it under control. But I get to a point where I just want to rage at somebody. I just want to start ranting and start swearing and start raising my voice and making a scene. It's only been since I have grown up a lot as a father and as a husband and as a person, as a man and as a person, and a spiritually minded atheist, that I have come to, or a spiritually minded person who happens to be atheist, that I've come to realize, even if I don't direct my anger at a person, by being angry in the presence of people, I'm triggering some people to make them to where they feel unsafe, and that includes my family, it includes people that I love. And even though I'm not swearing at you, or even though I'm not yelling at you, they feel unsafe because they don't like to be reminded that there's this part of me and this part of men in general, this part of masculinity in our society in general, that makes them feel like they're never safe anywhere that they go. And I think, and then you take these ads for these AI chatbots and for these and for porn, frankly, and for again in an environment, a social media app, where if a person who is an OnlyFans creator puts up, you can go to my OnlyFans, they take it down. But then if it's an AI generated, a service that shows, you can upload a picture of anybody and tell it what you want them to wear or not wear, and you can see it. And these are the apps that Mark Zuckerberg's letting them promote. And I'm like, how many 20-year-old boys are seeing this? How many 25-year-olds are seeing this? How many of them are downloading these apps and buying them? How many people who can get access to my daughter's profile pictures can upload them into these applications? And to live in that world and not be an angry man is a tough thing. Especially when you've been an angry man your whole damn life. And it was a challenge for me to not be angry all the time. So I got off of Facebook, or at least I stopped posting all the time, several times a day, every day. And I stopped getting on Facebook except once in a while to post for the Church of Horror, and then maybe watch a few Taylor Tomlinson videos, because I think that woman is so damn funny. She's great. Jordan Jensen the same. And I watch men too. I mean, John Marco, I think he's great. I can't watch Louis C.K. anymore. That was sad, but he's doubling down his toxicity, which sucks. I used to think Louis C.K. was so funny. I used to think Dave Chappelle was so funny. Okay, I still think some of Dave Chappelle's stuff is funny, but his new stuff, I can't watch it. I can't watch it. It's crap. And so when I talk about the app, and I know I do it a lot, and maybe it will come of nothing. It'll be yet another failure of mine. But every time I look at this thing and get into it lately and start scrolling through it, I'm like, it reminds me that I started the Church of Korihor for a reason. Together with my friends, to whom I'm very grateful. Nathan, I'm grateful to you. And David, I'm grateful to you. And Jenny, I'm grateful to you for helping me out there. There's some of you who know who you are, who wanted to help me with founding the Church of Korihor, but because of family relationships or what have you, you couldn't get involved. And I get it. I'm grateful to all of you out there. And there were quite a few of you who wanted to help and for whatever reason couldn't. And I thought now people are starting to recognize after a year that the Church of Korihor has existed. Number one, as Randy was telling me on Latter Daily Digest just a few weeks ago, he said, I thought the Church of Korihor was just like your handle on YouTube. I'm like, my handle on YouTube is Hellfire Agency. It's a mission of the Church of Korihor. He's like, I can't believe I've known you all this time. And I just realized that what you were saying is that the Church of Korihor is an actual organization registered with the state of Utah and the IRS. I'm like, you didn't know that the Church of Korihor is an actual church? He's like, no, I just thought it was like your thing, like your project. I'm like, well, it sure is that. But it's a movement. It's a spiritual movement of atheists and agnostics. And he said, up until I saw the footage of you, he said, when I saw the footage of you going out to the unsheltered and giving out blankets, that I realized, with that song playing in the background, like Korihor. And he's like, I realized, wait, this is like a real thing, like a real church, like you're really doing it. Like you're not just talking about, oh, we atheists would, if we had a church of our own, we would do this. You're actually going out there and doing it. And he's like, and I'm sitting there listening to it, not getting angry, really not getting angry with my friend Randy, who's a good man. No, what was it called? Momo Nomo is his channel now. You guys should all check it out. It's on YouTube. And I was sitting there listening to him, and I thought he might cry. I mean, I thought he might cry. I'm like, Randy, you guys know Randy. Those of you who watch his show or watch Latter Daily Digest, you'll know. He's a sensitive man. He's a good man. I like this Exmo. And I was like, are people just now starting to realize that the Church of Korihor is a thing? That we might actually do something, that we might actually make a difference. And then people ask me, what are you doing now? And most of the time I have to tell them, oh, we're still doing the blanket drive thing. Plus now we are taking food and needful items, including hygiene kits, to women who have been abandoned through Cherished Families, our partners at Cherished Families, women and children who have been abandoned by the Mormon polygamists, by the FLDS in Colorado City, Arizona, which is also Hilldale, Utah, right down the road here. And so we've been doing that, serving those women. You remember those women? Remember when everybody said, "Wow, I hate Mormon polygamy. Yes, it's trafficking. Yes, it's awful. But do they have to break up those families?" They didn't break up the families. Let's get that straight. The law enforcement did not break up these families. They arrested some of the leaders, including Warren Jeffs, and tried them for rape or being accomplices to rape. And the other ones fled. They fled to avoid the law. which is what Joseph Smith did too. This is one of the oldest traditions in Mormonism. To take advantage of women and girls, and then when the law comes looking for them, they split. And you can say that has nothing to do with the Mormonism of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. That just tells me you don't know the history of these people. These are my people. Okay. There are Mormon polygamists who were Rollinses. This is my community that I came from. And we have a responsibility. I feel a responsibility to do something for these women who have been abandoned and their children. And there's an organization down the road here. They spoke at our event. We had Jude, one of their employees, who came out from Las Vegas to our little tiny event here in St. George a couple of months ago. And Tim was there. Latter Daily Digest, Gene and everybody, the crew were all there. There weren't until Megan sang for us. And I passed the mic to Jude, who wasn't expecting to speak. And I said, we'd love to know your story. We'd love for you to tell us about cherished families. And she got up there and told us, well, since you invited me to say something, she said, this is my story. I grew up in Short Creek. She said, when I was 12 years old, I was promised to a man much older than me. I think she even said he was like a member of her family, which is, of course, very common in that community. And she said, and I was one of these people. And then she turned to me. And she said, I want to thank you, Mr. Rollins, for saying something about checking accounts. Because what I had mentioned, what I usually tell people, I say, what people don't understand about these polygamist women, they're not like the women you see on Sister Wives. Okay. They're not like the women you see on the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. No, not in this community, not in the FLDS. These women, many of them don't have a diploma, don't have a high school diploma. Some of them can't read. Most of them have never had a checking account in their life. They could be 40, 50, 60 years old, never opened a checking account, don't know how, don't have a driver's license. They don't know how to do basic life functioning things because their whole life, the order took care of them, and very badly at that. And their status in society had nothing to do with their resume, had nothing to do with their education, had nothing to do with their leadership skills, had nothing to do with their being autonomous and being able to take care of themselves. These women who are victims of Mormon polygamy were trafficked their whole life, and their whole value in society was dependent upon what a good product they were for being trafficked. And then Warren Jeffs got thrown in prison, where may he rot the rest of his life. But all these men in this community that these women had been trafficked to when they were still children in most cases, they were left with nothing. Their homes were gone, cars gone, providers gone, fathers for their children gone. And then to say, but you're free, you can go do whatever you want. When you've got 2 or 3 children in tow and no high school diploma, where are you going to go? Don't know how to open a checking account. Where are you going to go? You don't have a credit score. Many of these women, some of these people don't have social security numbers. They don't know how to do basic things. Not because of any fault of their own, because they were brought up in a cult. And we went down there one day because my sister Nikki, beautiful luminary of reason for the Church of Korihor, had these hygiene kits. I believe they had been donated to Pride of Southern Utah, and they didn't need them. They had enough, and so they had extra. We had extra here at my parents' house. my Mormon parents' house, still Mormon parents' house. And Nikki said, let's take these down to cherished families. I said, let's do it. So we went down to Colorado City. We just walked in the front door. We called the Dove Center first. And they said, we have everything. We have all that we need. We're like, you sure? We got blankets, because somebody had donated blankets, but they were blankets made for kids. I love to hand out blankets to people who are sleeping on the streets, who are sleeping rough. But we don't run into a lot of kids out there. Oh, you got them donated to the Church of Korihor. Okay, I got that wrong, Nikki. Nikki's here. And so we got these blankets, and we tried to give them to what is it, the Dove Center? No, the anyways, to the Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey group, and they were like, we have enough. Somebody remind me what the name of that is. That's not Dove Center. That's something else. What is it called? Anyways, and then that was Switchpoint. No, Switchpoint's up here. I'm talking about down in Colorado City. Anyway, they told us to call not chosen families. I always say chosen families. I have such an LGBTQIA plus mind. Yeah, it's St. George. Yeah, we tried to give them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh, that's right. They were going to give it to Switchpoint. And we got them at the Church of Korihor, and we gave them down to cherished families. And we went down there, and you guys, these women were beside themselves. It's just a few hygiene kits and a few blankets, a couple bags of blankets, kids' blankets. It's like Star Wars characters and dinosaurs on them and stuff. And these women were beside themselves grateful. And then we asked them if we had an art show, an arts auction, to auction some art that was donated by volunteers to raise money for you guys. Would you be all right with our little Church for Atheists saying that we were partnered with you? And they were enthusiastic in saying yes. These Mormon women, these formerly fundamentalist Mormon women, were like, please, we'll any help you can. And they were so grateful. And I thought, how does anybody think that we're not real, that we're not for real? How does anybody not know that we're not a joke? Look, I started out the Church of Korihor over a year ago. And I said in the first Godless sermon I did, as a matter of fact, it was in the broadcast I've taken down since, where we signed the Articles of Incorporation for the Church of Korihor in December 2024. And I said, people will say that the Church of Korihor is a joke. Let them. Parish Families is the organization. Good job, Nikki. Nikki's on it. Nikki's on top of things. And I said, let them say it's a joke. I'm totally cool with that. Because the more people who think we're just a joke, is the more people who are not looking into what we're doing, and the more freedom we have to do our work. But now we're coming upon a point. I always say that wrong. Coming upon a point in our lives, in the history of the Church of Korihor, where people are taking us seriously. And it's exciting. And if we can do something, like if this right here could become a way in which we replace the toxicity of Twitter, and even Reddit, frankly, can become such a toxic place, even Facebook groups, and replace that with communities where we pull people together and say, rather than just sitting here and talking shit about Mormonism, or rather than gathering together as a bunch of atheists. I didn't post. I posted for Nikki. I posted for people to go to the Church of Korihor's website and send to us. Do you think we should post a link? Nikki will post the link if she wants to. It's late. She doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to do into the chat. But yeah, you post a link to SUMAC. But I've talked about them like 3 or 4 times now. So yeah, Southern Utah Mutual Aid Coalition. Yeah. Send it to us at the Church of Korihor. Send us anything that you have that you think would be helpful. We'll send it. You know, Cherished Families and SUMAC, they're just the first. They're just the first two organizations to say, and they were both pretty enthusiastic, I will add, to say, look, we get that you are a small organization and that you're new, but we want your help if you can give it. And then they sent representatives to our little tiny meeting that we had next door to Thrive St. George in, what was this, February? And we got a glimpse of what this could be. And then our friend, maybe even be in the room here with us, Kathy Rutherford, was the first person to bid on a painting, to bid on a piece of artwork, and it was one of my paintings. I'm very honored and privileged to say, and won the auction for a piece of art, you know, for $100, $101, and the money went to Cherished Families. And it wasn't a lot. You know, generally when I give out blankets out on the streets in Salt Lake, we're talking maybe a dozen, maybe 2 dozen most of the time, and in one go, in one night. It's not a lot. But the lives, I mean, the looks in the faces of people, their lives change. And the 2 or 3 times I took my son Elijah with me. And, you know, my son Elijah wasn't doing great in school. He was getting bullied in school. He was getting bullied in school. And he didn't really want to go anymore to school. And he was having anxiety attacks. And he would always mention to me, he'd frequently mention that, I feel like there's so much in the world happening. And all I'm doing is going to school and getting picked on. And I don't do anything good. I don't do anything that makes a difference. I'm never going to do anything that makes a difference, he told me once. And I called him in sick to school that day. And I said, you're not going to school today. You're coming with me to Salt Lake. And we're going to go give out blankets to the unsheltered. And he was so excited. We went up there and we did it. And he got very tired walking. But then people started approaching him and talking to him and saying, who are you? And he'd say, I'm Elijah. That's my dad. And they'd say, what are you doing? And he'd say, I'm helping people who are cold. Hey, Lisa. And these people were overwhelmed with emotion. And my son got to see, this is 14 years old, got to see what it meant to have somebody who was a stranger to you look you in the eye and say, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your life. Thank you for taking time away from what you're doing to help somebody, to help me. And I could see in his eyes that he knew that he had made a difference. I thought, I was a grown man before I experienced this, really, when I was a missionary in Peru for the Mormon church. And now I'm doing it all the time, and I'm providing this opportunity to my son to do it. Boy Scouts never gave me that. High school never gave me that. And we're doing it. We're making a real change here. We're making a difference. This is a little bit ambitious, this app. But boy, I tell you, I really think we could do something here that could change the world. And if all that we did, and this is why I'm bringing up this today, even though I couldn't really show you what it looks like. I haven't even really looked at it. I just know that the core functionality has finally been installed in the development environment. But yeah, blah, blah, blah. I can foresee that plausibly within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we will have a few dozen people on this app who will regularly be seeing opportunities, ads, instead of for corporations to download some app that's just going to make you more toxic, more angry, more horny, more hungry, more, addicted to things. I mean, the things they can advertise on these social media platforms these days. Some of it's like, this. Wait a minute, this is like proven addictive. This thing that they're promoting, and it's like they can just promote it. They just promote Zen on social media. What the hell is going on? What? And I'm like, I can't help but look at it and think, how is there nobody else that I know of making an effort here to create something that will change the world? And how many of these people, if instead of seeing ads to throw your money away on billionaires getting richer and richer and collecting your information, your patterns, your behaviors, your work, and training AI models to do your job or my job, while it's trying to sell us on that inflation isn't happening all around us, as if we can't read the receipt we bring home from the grocery store, and we can't see what the numbers on the gas pump, and driving up our costs while driving down our wages. And then when people say to them, what is the solution that you expect when you don't have customers to sell to because you don't pay people anymore? They say, I'm sure it won't get that bad. There's sleep at the wheel. I'm surprised how many people are shocked now that people are using the R word. Not that R word. The other R word. Oh, not that one either. Recession. I'll just say it. Recession. People are talking about it again, finally, and comparing to 2008. And saying, whoa, 2008, don't create a panic now. This isn't anything like 2008. How is it not? Well, in 2008, what were we told in 2008 with the financial crisis? Oh, it was that the government was asleep at the wheels, at the wheel, they said. The institutions, Moody's, and whatever, all these, these organizations, these credit rating agencies, they were asleep at the wheel, and the guard dogs weren't paying attention. When are they paying attention? Moody's was selling ratings for fees. There was no honesty left in the system. That was Wall Street when it was regulated. Now it's completely off the chain. And we're looking around going, how could it be happening again? Gee, I freaking wonder. How could it be that all throughout 2020, we were told, you guys got to get back into the office as soon as possible. You got to make sure that you're not quiet quitting, also known as logging out at the end of your shift. You guys got to make sure you're not doing that because the company is suffering. No, people aren't spending money since they've been quarantined. Since we're all social distancing, now nobody's making any money, and you'll all be lucky if you still have your jobs. And then what happened with Wall Street? The whole time, as if it was totally insulated, as if it didn't have anything, it's almost as if speculation on Wall Street and stocks, the stock market, was not in any way reflected from the actual economic activity of our society. It's almost as if it was all fake. It's almost as if nobody was watching. It's almost as if they had their economy. And if our economy was killing us, so much better for them. And I can't help but think, could it really be that bad? I think we can change things. I think we can turn things around. I'll be the first to admit I don't know how. But we're doing something now where we can start organizing and get together working on ourselves, working on developing community, working on sticking up for each other, and going out of our way to help people. Thanks, Nikki. And going out of our way to help people. I get a notification on my computer every time somebody donates to the Church of Korihor. I'm not always watching it, so don't go thinking I just sit here and wait for the donations to come in. We can really make a difference here. SUMAC is one way. Like I said, those of you who don't know, go to korihor.org, click on the Give button. If you'll find our address there. If you have something that you can give to help families of people who are being detained by ICE and people who are being or people who have been deported and who are afraid now to go out onto the streets here in southern Utah, Washington County and surrounding area. If you can send food, we'll take it. Normally, I would say, and I have to give credit to Nikki for helping me with this. Nikki said to me a while ago, it was last year, I think, wasn't it? When we were running Rapture, the first blanket drive. And Nikki said to me, you should get an Amazon page so that people can just buy blankets on Amazon and send them to us. And I said, okay, Nikki, she remembers this. We can tell this story hopefully now, and we can laugh about it now. I said, do you realize that that's cutting Jeff Bezos and the billionaires in on, helping them to make profits off of us, off of our charity, off of our work? And number one. Number two, we have to pay for shipping, or they have to pay for shipping. Why would someone do that when it's cheaper and more efficient to just send us $10, send us $15, $20, $30? And she said, because they bought a blanket and they know that blanket is out there. I said, okay, but does it make that big of a difference? Just send us $20 and we can get 2-3 blankets out there versus spending $20 on one blanket that we get out there. Does it make that big of a difference to somebody to know that they bought a blanket on Amazon and that blanket is around someone's shoulders out there? And she said, yeah. She said, not everybody, you're right. Some people would rather just send money and tell us, just go out and do it. But some people want to buy it and see it in the cart, pay for it, know that it's on the way, even though it never physically ends up in their hands. They know it's out there. I said, okay, it costs me nothing. You're going to do all the work, Nikki. There's another instance where I make a woman do the work, I guess. I said, if you think it's such a good idea, we put it up there. And lo and behold, she was right and I was wrong. We got more donations, I think, in January. We got more donations through that Amazon link than we did people sending us physical stuff. As a matter of fact, yeah. Oh, and now she's telling me there have been orders. I've been in Virginia for a month. And yeah, sure enough, there were orders. There have been products coming in. Many of you know, you guys, I'm sure you realized, and I know I'm rambling now. I'm going to do this till we get to the 3-hour mark, which is in 7 minutes, and then I'm going to go to bed because I got to go up to Salt Lake and see my kids in the morning. I've been in Virginia for a month with my partner Winter. You guys have heard me mention Winter before. My partner Winter moved out to Virginia a few years ago, when they had an opportunity to sell the house that they raised their kids in. They, with their Mormon ex-husband, raised 5 children in Orem. And then their ex-husband came to them and said, this house that they got in the divorce, that Winter got in the divorce, that you and I bought for $150,000 is worth almost $500,000 on the open market now, even though it's just a rundown little house. This house was in pretty bad shape, in spite of Winter's best efforts. And he had told them, I think I can get you. He told them, I got an investor who's looking for houses in Orem to flip, and I can get you $300,000 for that house. That was 150 grand when they bought it, and they had like over $100,000 in equity in it. And they said no. There's nowhere in Utah I can move to with the profits that I would make off of this. I'd have to move out to the country just to find a place that I could afford to move to. So no, I won't sell. And I won't sell, certainly not for just 300 grand. And so he said to them, well, how much would you sell for? Yeah, okay, you give me $350,000 and I'll sell you the house. Okay. And he did. Got them 350 grand for that house. And they went and they took that money. They said to me, Joe, what do I do? What do you think I should do? I said, you made this decision. What did you want to do? I said, I wanted to move back to Virginia and start the commune that we've always talked about starting. I said, do it. And he said, what if nobody follows me out there? What if you never make it out there? What if, all these other people who've expressed interest in this artist commune that we wanted to start, what if nobody follows me out there? And I said, then that's what happens to you. I don't know what to tell you. I can't tell you the future. But I can tell you I'm going to do my damnedest to make it out there and to be a part of this dream because I love it. I love the idea that one day we'll have a place where queer, neurodivergent people, artists, will have a safe refuge from capitalism, frankly, from having to pay $2,000, $3,000 a month to rent a 2-bedroom apartment, run down, apartment in like West Jordan or something. Instead, go out into the country where your rent is, help us out with some of the bills. If you can't help us out with the bills, go milk that cow or go, or even just spend a little bit of time working on yourself, spend a little bit of time working in your art or your craft. And we take care of each other and we take care of people. And as people get excited about it and experience this, what it could be, we'll go and get more. We'll find somebody who wants to do it, who feels inspired to do it, and has a little bit of cash to, once again, do the same thing. Flip your house in some big city in Phoenix and Gilbert or something. Flip your house out there. Go buy a house out in the country and get a little commune started. Don't know how to do it? We're already the first ones through the wall. We've figured out how to do it. The Cora Horror app is just a way is one way in which people will be able to do this. Imagine again, if that's not an ad if you're not looking at an ad for the fact that it's truck month and you can buy a new GMC, blah, 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 blah. Instead, you're saying, by the way, I'm really excited for that because we actually need a truck out at the commune. What if you're seeing an ad for, hey, if you're stressed about where to go and how to make ends meet, you can come to our commune and help us, with the commune business out here. And if you can get out here with a tent or a van or a mobile home or some kind of shelter, or we have rooms available, or we have space available right now that's come available recently, get out here and connect with us so we can get you out here. If you can meld with our community and be a part of our community, you don't have to participate in this system anymore, man. You don't have to go out and buy something to be a productive member of the society. And frankly, you're better off in a place where people know you and are like you and care about you, and where it's understood that part of what you're doing here is so much more than just earning money over here and from this group of millionaires and billionaires, turn around, give it to that group of millionaires and billionaires, which are ultimately the same group either way. Instead of just doing that, taking money from the rich and giving it back to the rich, what if you spent some hours every week in therapy working on your trauma? What if you spent some time every week sorting out your body image issues? What if on a regular basis you took your dream that makes you excited about being alive, whether that's writing a novel or learning how to paint or learning how to draw or the thing that we've got a handful of me and Winter and at least one of Winter's kids, maybe more, while I was out there is I happened to mention, boy, I tell you what I would love to do out here in Virginia is to build a foundry that we could use for making like jewelry and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to get into welding. I've always wanted to get into, metal casting and stuff. And I thought, and I said, I'm just going to throw it out there. For a couple $1,000s worth of investment, we could start a foundry out here. There are people who do it and have a great time creating all sorts of amazing things and selling them online. And we could be people who do that. And found out that one of Winter's kids is really into it, at least one, maybe, and at least one, maybe two. And that Winter themselves is like, I've always wanted to get into that. And it's like, it was a thing they were never encouraged to do. And it was a stupid, silly dream when we were, before we were doing this. But now that we're doing this, it's like, this is totally plausible. And if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. We might as well try. When we say that the Church of Korihor is about making lives worth living, it's not lip service. This is what I'm talking about. When I say flash bright, this is what I'm talking about. You got this one chance. You're here till you die, and that's going to happen either way. You might as well have spent a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years of your life doing something you want to do, doing something that lights your heart up and makes you want to be alive, makes you want to makes you want to feel good that you brought more beings into this world. Show me a religion that does that. I was a Mormon 23 years of my life, officially or actively. And I was on paper a Mormon for 33 years of my life. And I never once felt like my life was worth living. Even though I felt like God had vindicated me. God will give me justice. That was one of my favorite movie. Apparently, it's nothing like the book. It's a Count of Monte Cristo, if you don't know. God never gave me the vindication that I get with the Church of Korihor. In fact, when I tried to find this sense of purpose on my mission with a good mission president I love very much, Presidente Benitez, I was punished. I was told, you're supposed to be out there converting people to the gospel and getting baptisms. And I said, yeah, but I found out that we could get into more doors and talk to more people and build friendships if we started going up to people on the street. This is something I did while I was in the Amazon in 2001. Yeah, 2001 in Iquitos, and then later in Moyobamba, and I even did a little bit of it in Lima. That if I went up to somebody on the street and said, who was building a second story to their house, and said, "Hey, can I help you?" And they're like, the first guy I walked up to, I talk about this in my book, The Korihor Argument. I walked up to this guy and I said, "Can I help you?" He's like, "What do you mean? Can you help me?" I said, "Can I help you with building your house?" And he laughed at me and he said, "No." And I said, "Really? Why not? You don't need help?" And he's like, "I need help, but you can't help me." And I said, why not? And he said, because you're wearing a tie. Okay, how about now? My companion was shocked. He's like, what are you doing, Rollins? I'm like, we're going to help this man. He's like, and then what? Go to lunch? He's not going to listen to a lesson. He's not going to listen to a discussion. And I said, who cares? He'll think differently about Mormons. And that if we're not here to represent Christ, what are we here to do? And we went, we talked to that guy, and I helped him take bricks, big heavy stacks of bricks. My companion and I both taking armfuls of bricks up this guy's stairs up to the second story of his house and setting them up, and then like mixing up mortar and setting it up and building this guy's house, helping this guy build a second story to his house. And I hurt my back severely actually doing that. I was not very good at it. And eventually that guy did sit down and listen to a first discussion, but in the process he told me, he's like, I'm Catholic. I don't never intend to be Mormon. And I said, that's all right, man. Whatever. And then I got a phone call saying, what are you doing, Elder Rollins? What are you doing out there? And I said, we're doing God's work, man. We're doing, as you've done unto the least of these, my brother, you've done unto me. What am I supposed to be doing? Supposed to be knocking on doors and getting discussions so you can get baptisms. I hate doing that. Who cares about baptisms? We don't get nearly enough of them. We never get enough of them for anybody else's standards. And as soon as the missionaries get transferred, as soon as I get transferred to another area, the people I baptize stop going to church. So what good does it do? This guy has a second story to his house now, and every time that somebody tells him, hey, I love what you did with this place, so I can't believe that you got this place done, he'll say some Mormon missionary walked up to me and said, I want to help you with your house. When I said, you can't because you're wearing a tie, he took his tie off and started getting to work. He said, that guy's going to tell that story his whole life. That's the work. That's the work. I got in trouble for it. And now I got my own church. We do it our way. And guess what? I never did anything so fulfilling in all my life, possible exception raising my kids. And that's close. And I love my kids. To wit, I need to go see my kids in the morning. I love you guys. I love your faces. We're having Godless Sermon 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time from Salt Lake City. Well, from Utah County. I'll be out there with my kids, and we'll do the broadcast from the old place. Or maybe I'll take it out and we'll do it on the road, but do it out in Salt Lake City or something. But I've been preparing a good one, and we're going to get back in the swing of things. And I'm excited. So if you guys can give, please go to corahor.org and give. And if you are interested in the app, make sure that you go to corahor.app. I haven't checked on it yet, but supposedly there's a sign up form there where you can sign up to become a beta tester for the app. Let's watch that video that I had talked about earlier, where we are promoting on TikTok. We tried promoting on YouTube, but they were like, you can't promote religious organizations on YouTube. It's like they do it all the time. The Mormons do it all the time. You guys suck. This ad started taking off on TikTok, and it was really, really good. Let's see here. That's not it. Hold on. I got it here. Is it Rapture? How did I call this? You know what? I'm pull it up on TikTok. I might have thrown the actual file away. TikTok Hellfire Agency. Oh, can you guys see that screen? Yeah, here we go. We'll figure it out. Is this delivering sound? I'm gonna play a video. You guys tell me if you can hear it. No sound. Hold on. Let me dump this one out. Oh wait. Yeah. Stop screen. Share screen. Keep the sound.
From this
Okay. This so I'm getting that we have sound. This one is not the video. I want to show you guys the ad that took off. I'll show you the ad here. You see this one that says 37,000 views. I think I spent a total of like $300, which is more than I should have to spend to get this kind of attention on TikTok. But you should see, hopefully it will play the comments where you can see it. I want you to see this ad. When people started seeing this ad, with even just promoting it $50 at a time, it was startling the reaction we got from total strangers. This is why I've been saying for a while, we really need an advertising fund that people can donate to, give $5, $10 to an advertising fund. Because frankly, if we could throw $1,000 a month on TikTok ads for the Korahor app or for the missions, man, there's no telling. Look at how just spending a few dollars a week, look at what this ad, this one video did. I think you'll be very impressed. I hope you will be. We've all heard the stories of wealthy churches that are turning their backs on the needy this winter. You deserve to know that there's a poor church that's doing differently. That's partly because we are a godless church. We're the Church of Korahor. Korahor is a legendary atheist from the Book of Mormon who taught critical thinking and stood up to expose the greed of the church. And for that, his Christian neighbors turned him out onto the streets and left him for dead. 1 year ago, I started the Church of Korahor with some friends, and our first mission was to go out to Salt Lake City and deliver blankets to the people living on the streets. And every year we lose some of our neighbors, frozen on those cold streets. We're trying to expand and start serving our neighbors all over the country. Korahor is fictional, but the Church of Korahor is very real. I won't ask you to change what you believe. I won't even ask you to join our church. Will we help?
Like Korahor, I was lost and alone. Like Korahor, cast far from home. Like Korahor, they stole my voice. Like Korahor, left without a choice. But unlike Korahor, I can speak again. Unlike Korahor, I have a friend. In my darkest hour, my hope was renewed. Because unlike Korahor, I had you.